7:30, and we'd like to call the meeting to order. We have 5 items on the agenda tonight. The first one is just to approve the minutes of August 8th. The second is the petition of Mark Franklin on an accessory apartment. Third, John Wyman for A+ Waste and Recycling. Fourth will be Southeast Regional Network, the High Point Treatment Center. And then we have an abutter requesting a discussion regarding the McLean Hospital issue. We're going to take them in that order. So the first order of business is to approve the minutes of August 8th. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I make a motion, we approve.
Second.
Is there any discussion on the motion? Dorothy?
In favor.
Liz?
In favor.
Favor? Norman?
Okay,
And I'm in favor also, so the motion carries. The second petition is of Mark Franklin regarding an accessory apartment. It's to hear the petition of Mark Franklin, 78 Plimpton Street, Middleborough, Mass. 02346, relative to his request to allow for an accessory apartment located at 78 Plimpton Street, Middleborough, Assessors Map 033, Lot 4762. Is there Mark Franklin or a representative of Mark Franklin would like to take the podium? Please, if you would, just state your name, speak clearly into the mic, it's being recorded, and just tell us what you would like to do.
I'm Mark Franklin, and you pretty much said I'd like to add an accessory apartment, an in-law apartment, to my house at 78 Plimpton Street.
Yes, I will. I'll read it. Mr. Chairman, I have a letter from Robert Whalen, the building commissioner.
Okay.
Subject, Mark Franklin, 1321, 78 Plimpton Street, accessory apartment, map lot 33, lot 4762, Honorable Board. I have reviewed the petition submitted by Mark Franklin for his request for a special permit to construct an accessory apartment to the side of the existing single-family dwelling located at 78 Plimpton Street. The applicant meets the zoning requirements for an accessory apartment. I offer the following. 1, the plot plan layout shows the proposed addition to be located in the basement. 2, 3, the new addition does meet the less than 50% floor area required. 4, the accessory apartment will have the required 2 means of egress. 5, the accessory apartment will be for the owner's mother. I would support this request. Respectfully submitted, Robert J. Whalen, Building Commissioner. I'd like to make a note that the numbering is 1, 3, 4, and 5 on the points.
Are there any questions from any of the other board members?
Just one question, there's no additional building being done, it's in the existing dwelling, simply in
That's
the
correct.
existing basement.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the petitioner, could we please have the name of the occupant of this proposed apartment?
It would be both my parents, Larry and Barbara Franklin, part of the year.
And that is their formal names? Your
Excuse me?
father is Larry?
Lawrence.
Lawrence.
The reason that's asked is that's going to be part of the motion to accept the accessory apartment. We're granting it with them living there. So if at such time that ever changes and you want to reuse that for whatever, that allows you to come back before the board. But it's permitted for them specifically to be there.
Fine.
Okay?
Very good.
Are there any other questions? Are there any questions from the audience regarding this petition? If not, do I hear a motion?
Mr. Chair?
Oh.
Hi, 79 Plimpton Street, I am in a butter.
Suzanne Dubay. I did just want to briefly speak on behalf of Mark. He's been a great neighbor, so we do appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, did you record, did you write down the names? Lawrence and Barbara.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Eggleston.
I'd like to move that the petition of Mark Franklin, 78 Plimpton Street, Middleborough, Mass. 02346, relative to his request to allow for an accessory apartment located at 78 Plimpton Street, Middleborough Assessors Map 33, Lot 4762, be approved with the following stipulation, that the occupants will be Lawrence and Barbara Franklin for their lifetime.
I'll second.
Okay, motion has been made and second. Joe?
In favor.
Norman?
Favor?
In
Liz? And
favor?
Dorothy?
In favor.
And I'm in favor. The motion carries. Just so you know, there's a 14-day that the board has to file this, and then there's a 20-day appeal period in which anybody can appeal this decision. And then you will be notified via the board's administrative assistant formally of the process and the permit. And then you can go ahead and move forward through the building department.
Very good.
Okay?
Okay. Great.
Best wishes.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your
You're welcome.
consideration.
Okay, the third on the agenda tonight is for A Plus Waste and Recycling, John Wyman. It's actually a continuance from a hearing that began on September 13th, 2012. And it's to hear the petition of A Plus Waste and Recycling relative to his request to allow for a special permit per section 4.E.2 of the zoning bylaws to establish a single-stream recycling operation and composting operation of leaf and yard waste and related material, and a variance per section 5E3, side setback to a firm location of an existing building. The subject property is located at 88 River Street, Middleborough Assessors Map 002, Lot 5463. Attorney Wyman?
Thank you, Mr. Priestley. We were here last on the 8th of August, at which time the matter was continued over to this evening. On the 8th of August, the board had not received a response from the peer review commissioned by the board on our engineering's environmental impact statement. I received a copy of that peer review on Monday. Our engineer has responded to it. I think all of that material has been given to the board through your administrative assistant. And I think the conclusions reached by your peer review was that the environmental impact study was in order. They had some questions with respect to the methods used in the course of their examination and conclusions, and the methodology, I think, was accepted. I don't know whether the board members have had an opportunity to review the material, but what I have here tonight is our engineer to comment if the board has questions with respect to either his report or the impact of the peer review that may be on that report. Absent that, it's the pleasure of the board as to what we do.
Okay. Well, I believe we received via email this morning the comments. Is that correct?
Well, the response.
The response.
Yeah.
So we haven't really had an appropriate amount of time to either look at it ourselves or to have Weston and Sampson respond to all of that. The second thing is that albeit we might be getting close. We have one request that I'd like to make, and that is whether you yourself or your client really come in and sit with Tammy and go through absolutely every document that, and plan and landscaping plan. I mean, we've discussed so much stuff prior to the next meeting to make sure that absolutely everything is in order, so that as it's written into the decision, there's nothing in dispute in terms of what documents we're referring to when we write the decision. And then lastly, I know you were, at least I'm told that you were given a copy of a letter from the planning board.
Correct.
And I think it would be helpful if we read that into the record. So, Dorothy, would you be willing to read that in? Do you have it? It's a letter dated August 20th from the planning board.
Okay. Referring to A+ Waste and Recycling, 88 River Street, Assessors Map 002, Lot 5463. Honorable Board. The Planning Department was notified that a public hearing will be held to review A+ Waste and Recycling on August 22nd, 2013. This office is in receipt of the following: ESS Group Incorporated, 8/21/13, response to Weston Sampson's 8/19/13 EIA review. Weston and Sampson's 8/19/13 EIA review. ESS Group Incorporated, 6/12/13 Environmental Impact Assessment, EIA. The Planning Department reviewed the documents above and finds that the EIA prepared by the ESS Group Incorporated for APWR addresses only 3 of the 13 parameters identified in this office's June 13, 2013 letter. The EIA report addresses only noise, odor, and traffic concerns. However, the Planning Department's concerns, numbers 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13, listed below, are still not addressed. 1, operational capacity to be identified, including the number of vehicle trips, times of operation, maximum quantities per day, month, specific waste to be composted, and step-by-step handling methods for composting and recyclable operation. 2, traffic study and mitigation. 3, noise study and mitigation. 4, odor study and mitigation. 5, health study of compost and recycled materials for air emissions and mitigation. 6, buffering and screening of the facility from roads, abutting property, and adjacent natural resource areas. 7, drainage study to determine the proper control of surface water runoff. 8, groundwater study to determine impacts and mitigation for adjustment private water wells supplies. Water supply wells. 9, facility discharge from trucks washing and unclean recycled materials. 10, environmental impact study for Conservation Commission related issues and mitigation. 11, compliance with the zoning bylaw. 12, safety and security provisions for the facility. 13, storage provisions for composting recyclable materials. Methods to prevent blowing of litter and nuisance animals such as rats, skunks, seagulls, and insects, including but not limited to flies. This office has 2 concerns with how noise was analyzed as follows. 1, the methodology used to determine the site's baseline conditions for noise needs to be changed. ESS used the existing unpermitted site activities for their sound level baseline. The sound level should be based on residential conditions, which produce substantially less noise than the current unpermitted activities. It's recommended that the noise baseline be adjusted to residential conditions and that the status of the unpermitted activities be reviewed by the zoning office. 2, the study does not appear to address the impacts of noise on wildlife habitats located towards the rear of the property along the Taunton River corridor. If you have any questions or wish to discuss this matter, please do not hesitate to contact me. Sincerely, Paul A. Belletti, Construction Administrator.
I think, by and large, I think many of these things have been discussed in varying degrees. So
Right.
one of the things that I'm going to request is that we either have a member of the planning board here to openly discuss it in the meeting, or we're going to have to dig out the material that has already been discussed and present it to them, because I know several of the points have at least been, you know, maybe a broad brush stroke, but we've discussed them.
Correct.
But I think their points are valid points to address, so that we can neatly tie that all up. The only one that has bothered me, because I don't understand it, is the methodology used to determine the site's baseline conditions for noise. We're dealing with an industrial zoned piece of property that's abutting a residential neighborhood. And it seems like it's an unpermitted use. So, I mean, there's several businesses, if you will, that abut residential properties that, you know, I mean, I'm not sure why we're applying a residential noise, but I think that's something that I need to get clarification from either Ruth or Paul himself as to why we're applying that way. Because both engineering groups applied it in the same manner.
Correct.
So it's not like ours said, whoa, wait a minute, you shouldn't be doing that. So that is one of the questions that I'll raise at that point. So I think between the planning board's comments, the fact that we have to review the comments and get that done, plus we need to have either yourself or your client come in and go through with Tammy, I think the best course of action at this point is to, if it's okay with you, to go ahead and continue this meeting to September 12th, put you first on the agenda, and see if we can just work through these issues.
I guess that works for us. I mean, I say that hesitantly because, but that's, I'm not trying to slam anything down anyone's throat.
Right.
The one comment I'd make is that the report that the planning board is commenting on was in this town hall on June 30th, June 13th to June 15th. 2 months later, all of a sudden, he gets to extract information from it. And had he perhaps raised these issues contemporaneous with the submission, we would have had materials or had this kind of discussion with the board and not have to concern ourselves with those comments. I'm not putting anything on the comments themselves. I'm just saying that it was sort of upsetting to me to get this afternoon when in fact, and it's dated August 20th, and he's referencing a letter dated August 21st. So clearly they dated it August 20th to make it sound like it's a little bit sooner than August 22nd. But I just want to put that out there because we got that and said, gosh, if our engineer had seen this, or at least at the very initial stages of his operation, he could have at least done whatever he had to do to comment on those things that affected him. So with that said,
I understand.
we've got, Ron's got Ocean Spray eager to start delivering material, and we're just trying to get things going. And it's the cranberry season. We're trying to be a good neighbor to another Middleborough company and move forward with this. So time is of the essence. If it's the 12th of September, then that so be it. So,
Okay. Attorney Mnuchin.
Just a brief note, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, for the record, once again, David Mnuchin of Attleboro representing Mr. and Mrs. Caswell. We concur with the comments of the planning board, and we urge you to use all your due diligence to address those conditions. What I've given you tonight are a few additional conditions that are of concern for my client. Some of them are included in the planning board's letter, but I just want to go over them. The most critical one is the screening and buffering. The screening plan that I've seen to date really doesn't, I believe, comply with the new bylaw, and I've attached an excerpt of 5.5 to the attachment, the handout I've given out. It basically indicates in 5.5.1 that the screening setback in an industrial zone should be consist of natural vegetation or plant and landscape materials consisting of a combination of trees, shrubs, and grasses to visually screen the proposed use. And I think those words are key, visually screen the proposed use. That screening means you can't see it. So there has to be something more elaborate than what's been submitted to make sure that when the seasons change, we don't have the loss of leaves and all of a sudden now you have no screening. And I think that's key. That's very important to my clients. So we would ask you to consider that. That should consist of rethink a berm and obviously some suitable plantings that are going to be green all year round and provided, or fencing or a combination of it through a registered landscape architect. Also, this has to be 150 feet from the street line to cover the entire street frontage of the lot, and it says driveways and walkways are permissible for convenience of use. But I don't believe that's been addressed appropriately under this new bylaw, and I think that's critical for not only my client, but the other neighbors that may be there. We've also indicated in number 2, the compost business should be just limited to yard and leaf waste only. The hours of operation should be determined, and that no other businesses are operating from that site unless the building inspector would rule that those prior existing uses are indeed validly existing prior non-conforming uses, which may be continued. We think it's key that there should be some burden put on the applicant so that if they do get a special permit, they would have to clean the municipal streets, and not only clean the streets, but provide for the cleaning of the trucks that are ingressing and egressing from the premises. Street cleaning would be by way of not just a street sweeper that would sweep and turn up the dust, but it would have to be a more elaborate street sweeper that contains the water and not only sweeps but vacuums, et cetera, that we've all seen. And finally, my clients would like that there be a condition indicating that there should be no outdoor welding operations on the site. So, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, during your deliberations in the upcoming weeks, we'd ask you to consider these, and we would hope that the applicant presents some type of a plan that we could all look at for the screening and buffer. I think that's key to the neighbors on this particular project. There is a requirement on 5.5.2 of certain screening and property, screening from the property lot lines. That does not affect my client directly, but the 5.5.1 requirement does. So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you on the 12th.
Mr. Andrews.
Mr. Chairman, Lincoln Andrews, 28 Sachem Street. Was that a letter from the planning board or from the planning department?
It is a letter from the planning board on the planning director, Ruth McCauley Joffrey's letterhead.
So that was voted
But
on
it's
by the
from
planning
Paul.
board? Was that voted up by the planning board to submit it?
It does not say whether it was or not.
I think there needs to be clarification on that, because there, as we all know, there is a difference between the planning department and the planning board.
Right.
Would you like a copy of, do you have a copy of that letter?
I trust what he said, and
Right.
he's looking at it.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Any other comments from the board? Joe?
I hate to bring it up, but I'm not too in favor of this comment from the planning board. And Paul Fellini, construction administrator, what does that mean? Does he work for the town in that capacity? For the planning board? Well, I have a real problem with this letter. I don't know what he's trying to zone, but this isn't the area that needs the most protection in our town. It's industrial zoned land. And as far as I'm concerned, He's way off base on just about everything that I read. And if he's coming in here, fine. But he's not going to get any positive response from me, I can tell you.
Mr. Priestley, I totally agree with Mr. Freitas. I think this has been an ongoing issue, as you noted at the beginning of this, and for this letter to be submitted at the last minute on this hearing, I think is unfair to the applicant. This is an industrial zone piece of land, and as far as street sweeping, you know, that's at the board, and we all live near areas. I live near burn sand and gravel. Well, you know what? It's part of the operation, and keeping it clean is reasonable, but such defined conditions, I think, are excessive. It's an industrial zone piece of property. Residents moved into it.
Thank you.
One other point, Mr. Caswell brought to my attention, I don't want to be remiss. It was our understanding that the applicant would no longer haul until the board reached conclusions on this application. The two pictures that were submitted by Mr. Caswell show on July 19th of this year a truck hauling, it looks like debris and et cetera, going in and out of the site. It was my understanding, Mr. Chairman, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the applicant was going to forbear from those activities until there was a solution to, or a resolution and determination of his application, but we just want to bring that to the board's attention.
That's interesting.
Mr. Chairman, all I can see there is a truck going into the property. I can't tell what's in it, if anything.
Sir?
Mr. Priestley, it was my understanding that he wasn't supposed to be hauling anything in there, regardless of what it was. Obviously, you can see there's stuff in the truck going in there.
I can't see what's in that truck. I'm sorry.
You can see the load is covered, you can see the load is bulging.
It doesn't mean anything to me. It's supposed to be covered in going down the road anyway. It doesn't show me anything. I'm sorry.
You can see in the picture, Mr. Priestley, the gate is locked. They showed up, they sent them away. No, you didn't. Sent them away. So, I don't want to go.
My name is Ron.
Excuse me. You don't have the floor, so I'm going to ask you nicely to refrain from speaking unless you want to come to the podium, identify yourself with your name and address, and comment on it like everybody else in the room.
My name is Ron High. I'm the applicant. I'm the owner of the property. The truck did show up. You can see from the pictures the gate was locked. The company contacted me. I told them that I had a gentleman's agreement with the zoning board, and that until we had things resolved, I could not accept the material. Truck left. There are a lot of trucks, though, that pull down Auburn Street with different amounts of material.
Where's the, yeah, that's September 12th. Should I just tell them that? Yeah. Tammy just brought to my attention specifically for your concern, Lincoln, about the letterhead. The letterhead is in fact from the planning board, but it does say, Honorable Board, the planning department was notified. So it is the planning department that's the force behind the letter, not the planning board. Okay? Just to clarify.
I'm sorry. I don't read that. If you're reading out of the first sentence under Honorable Board,
I'm reading in two paragraph spots. The planning department was notified, and then about the ESS group, there's 3 items listed, and then the planning department reviewed the documents. It's listed again. You see where I'm looking, Joe?
on the second, on the...
Yeah, it's referenced twice as the planning department, but it's written on the planning board's letterhead. So it's for no other purpose than to clarify a statement that I made so that we're accurate. Certainly doesn't change how you might feel or anything
well,
like
I'm
that.
not-
Right, so
you know-
it's just a clarification.
I'll believe it when they tell me.
Okay. Anyone else like to be heard on it? Or do I hear a motion to continue to September 12th?
So moved.
Second?
Joe?
In favor.
Norman?
In favor, but I have a question.
Go ahead.
Seeing as we're approaching September 13th, are we going to have a first anniversary party for this petition?
With the cake. Yeah, let's have it down there.
Are you in favor?
In favor.
All right, Liz?
In favor.
Dorothy?
In favor.
And I'm in favor. So the motion carries. We'll continue this till September 12th. And if you would just get in contact with,
You know, I started, for tonight, I started making a list of what we had submitted, so that's, we're on the same page.
okay.
Thank you.
And then I'd love to be able to get all that information on trying to move it too. We did. As soon as that list is compiled, we'll forward it to you. All right.
I have a question I didn't want to ask because they make a big thing, the neighbors do, about a berm and the landscaping. But if the site is lower than the houses, why does a berm have to be so that you don't see?
Absolutely. Okay, the next petition is to hear the petition of Southeast Regional Network, who will lease to High Point Treatment Center, Inc., renovate the former St. Luke's Hospital for 72-bed psychiatric hospital and outpatient clinic with 200 employees over 3 shifts. The grounds will maintain present parking, improve planting, and a small gazebo. The subject property is located at 52 Oak Street, Middleborough Assessors Map 50N and 50J, and Lot 5216. The hearing is open, and the floor is yours. If you would just identify yourself and give us the rundown.
Sure, thank you. My name's Daniel Mumbauer. I'm the President and CEO of High Point Treatment Center, as well as the President and CEO of Southeast Regional Network. Obviously, our petition is to renovate and reopen up the former St. Luke's Hospital, which the property's been pretty much abandoned for about a decade now, and it's been in disrepair, graffitied, vandalized, and certainly visited by many of folks over the few years since before we owned it, and we really feel that there's a huge need for services in the area, and we're planning on investing approximately $10 million plus to renovate the hospital, and about another $1 million in other capital improvements, furnishings, equipment, et cetera, to operate the property. We really are not looking to expand the property. The sides of the buildings would remain intact, and the asphalt area would not be expanded. The parking as it is today, as far as land that's historically been asphalted, would only be asphalted in areas today that are currently grassed and treed, would remain grassed and treed, and we certainly would be adding and enhancing the landscaping of the property itself, and really trying to turn it into, quite frankly, a state-of-the-art facility here in town. The staff of the property would operate 24/7. The staff consists of psychiatrists, internal medicine physicians, nurses, counselors. We will renovate and reopen the commercial kitchen in the lower level of the facility, reopen the cafeteria in the lower end of the facility, as well as we were proposing to open a small outpatient clinic in the lower level of the facility. Historically, there actually has been counseling services in the building next door before that property was closed and sold. And from all the demographics I looked at in the area, there's certainly a lot of unmet need for community services here in Middleborough, and certainly throughout the southeast region of Massachusetts. Currently, our company operates 775 beds throughout southeastern Massachusetts. We operate over 20 sites in southeast Massachusetts, and we have over 1,000 employees. We have always been a good neighbor in all the sites that we operate at. The current site we operate our hospital at is in Plymouth, Mass. On Route 3A, also called State Road, in the village of Manamet, in the town of Plymouth. And my neighbors consist of a daycare center directly across from me. Catty corner to me is a church. And directly across from me on the pond is the town's Little League fields, as well as the Indian Brook Elementary School. I've been at the facility since it opened in 1987, and we've operated an inpatient psychiatric hospital on that site for the past 7 years, and we've been a great neighbor. In fact, a lot of the development that you see in the greater Manamet area around our facility was built after our facility, and they have built hundreds of homes directly within walking distance of my facility over the last 20 years. And if you went by our facility today or any day, you'll see it's well-maintained, well-landscaped, professionally run. You will not find folks hanging out outside of our facility or hanging in the parking lot or hanging in the village of Manamet, which is our downtown area in Manamet. Folks who come in for treatment services, particularly at the proposed location here in Middleborough, this would be a locked facility, unlike a lot of our beds in Plymouth are unlocked beds, which most of our programs are unlocked except for our inpatient beds. In an unlocked facility, obviously folks have the right to say, you know what, I don't want to be in treatment, and can walk out the door. Our site here in Middleborough would be a locked facility, so folks would not have the ability to say, you know what, I don't want to be in treatment anymore, I want to walk out the door. We would be a traditional mental health facility. Certainly from our experience, a lot of the individuals we serve would be what in our terminology would be considered duly diagnosed, meaning that they have addiction issues as well as mental health issues. So part of the scope of services that we would provide and currently do provide in the same level of care, we would provide detox for folks who need detox, as well as medication stabilization and psychiatric services. The facility itself would have 4 units, the largest unit being 22 beds, the smallest unit being 14 beds. The smallest of the units would be an adolescent unit for teenagers. There's a large unmet need for inpatient beds for teenagers and honestly for adults. If you go to most emergency rooms throughout the state of Massachusetts today, you will find in any given day there's dozens of folks stuck in emergency rooms waiting to be admitted to a bed. And our organization has been looking for a couple of years to find an appropriate site. And when one of my board members offered to donate the Middleborough property to us, based upon the construction of the building, that it was constructed as an inpatient hospital, it was really, for us, a godsend, quite frankly, that it's actually built very solid, even though it has been empty all these years, and would be an ideal home for us. On the employment side, we would be moving our current unit from Plymouth to here. So out of the 200 positions here in Middleborough. We expect no more than 50 folks transferring onto the property. So we would be hiring about 150 to a little bit more than 150 new staff here in Middleborough. We currently do employ 14 folks at our other facilities in the surrounding communities who are Middleborough residents, but certainly with 150 plus new jobs, we would anticipate a large number of folks from the local community working at the facility.
That it? You done?
I can kind of give a little bit more overview if you prefer, or if you'd rather open up for questions.
No, I just don't want to cut you short.
Oh, okay. All right.
You all set?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay, so before you leave the podium, to our board members, do you have questions? We do have a few letters that we'll read into the record relative to the petition itself, but I was wondering if there was any questions from the board at this point.
Mr. Chairman? In your informational overview,
Yes,
you say this is not a forensic facility.
that is correct.
What is a forensic facility?
Forensic facility is when you have an individual who who has committed a crime in the community, and they go before a judge in the court, orders a forensic evaluation. So you'd go to a specialized facility that holds a special license to do forensic evaluations. And that is not within the scope of services that our agency provides. And I know that's certainly always an important issue to a neighborhood in the community is forensic services are certainly more intense services. And I just thought it was important to point out to the board that it's not within the scope of the services that we provide as an agency or would provide here in Middleborough.
So you're not the state hospital for the criminally insane.
That is correct, we are not. In fact, the normal flow to come to our facility literally is a family would bring someone to an emergency room of a general hospital, and a physician at that general hospital would evaluate somebody for inpatient admission, and then they would be transported from that emergency room to our facility. A lot of the general hospitals around the state do have psychiatric bed capacity. A lot of folks look at a general hospital, don't really think of mental health services, but it's very common that general hospitals do have a unit. The reality, though, is the need for services goes beyond the capacity of the general hospitals. Like Morton Hospital has a unit, Brockton Hospital has a unit, St. Luke's Hospital in New Bedford has a unit, Jordan Hospital in Plymouth has a unit. So a lot of folks don't think the fact that general hospitals do provide mental health services, but they obviously provide a lot of other medical services, so folks don't really stop and think the scope of most facility services.
I think one of the questions I would have, and one of the concerns I would have as a resident of the town, is the safety and security issues.
Sure, absolutely.
That either could come as a result of having a facility like that, or augmenting your particular policies and procedures and how you handle your patients, both in and out, that would keep the community safe.
Absolutely, yep.
So if you could just take a minute and describe both on the intake side and obviously the release side.
Discharge side, sure.
Yeah, on the discharge side, what happens?
Sure, that's fine. On the inpatient admission side, the admissions do come through emergency rooms. We don't have an assessment center, so you wouldn't walk into the facility and look for a psychiatric assessment for an inpatient admission. Normally, when someone's going to be admitted to a hospital, they're in crisis. So they normally, because we don't operate in an emergency room, you would go to an emergency room. So obviously, you can go down to Toby and Wareham or Jordan or Morton, or the three closest to here, and the evaluations are done there, and then they would determine that it's an appropriate level of care for admission. They would be transported from that emergency room by ambulance to us. Since it's not a situation that they would come by sirens going or lights flashing. It's used, the ambulance is used for safe transportation to the facility. But there really would be no disturbance to the neighborhood by the ambulance transportation itself. On the discharge side, there's a number of choices for clients for discharge today and would remain in place here in Middleborough. We certainly, inside our company, we operate a lot of step-down beds, so folks who are appropriate to go to a rehab service, we operate 5 rehab facilities here in Southeast Mass, so that certainly is one place where some of the individuals that we serve would go to. On the adolescent side, we actually operate an adolescent facility called The Castle up in Brockton, that some of the kids would go up to our facility in Brockton. Other folks would go back home again, right from our facility, and some folks would go on to housing run by a number of different providers around the Commonwealth, throughout the Commonwealth. We really don't run into a situation where people are discharged and would hang at the property. We do provide transportation. You know, if you look at the current locations of our other sites, where all our programs operate in very high-density areas that you know, you want to be considered to the folks around you and make sure that you are a good neighbor. So you know, we do provide transportation. Families obviously provide transportation also, but you know, being an inpatient facility, discharge planning is obviously key to the success of anyone leaving our facility. So we certainly do not feel like we would have any undue burden on the community, the neighborhood, or the downtown area. And certainly that comes from my personal experience of operating these facilities. I've been doing this for 29 years, and I've been operating High Point Treatment Center as the CEO of our different corporations for almost 20 years. So I certainly have the background and I've done it for a long time.
So, remind me to ask you a question. Sure. Don't let me forget, all right?
Okay.
Because I certainly will forget it. But, so, if I understood you correctly, you said that your clients have different means by which they can discharge.
Yes.
So this is a selection process that they themselves choose?
They absolutely part of their discharge plan, and it's just like anyone else who goes to any hospital. Like if you had an illness and you went to a general hospital and it was time to discharge from the hospital, someone could approach you and say, based upon how you're doing today, I think you should go to Spalding Rehab. And somebody else might say, well, I think you should go to a nursing home. And the third person can say, I think you should go home. And there's different reasons why people would propose different plans. At the end of the day, that when you're out of medical crisis, in our case, our medical crisis is a psychiatric crisis, and a person at that point is safe to go back to the community, you certainly can't dictate to somebody that this is what you're going to do at that particular point. We can dictate if somebody is unsafe to go to the community, to say to somebody, you are not going to be discharged. Now, obviously, we operate many levels of care that you couldn't even do that. For instance, we operate 5 traditional detox facilities around Massachusetts. And at a traditional community-based detox program, if a person comes in for detox and they've been there for 4 days and says, you know what, I don't want to participate in treatment anymore. I decided I want to go out and go visit with my friends and go out tonight to a club. Well, obviously, if they are not at any type of risk to themselves, they have the legal right to do that. Now, in the case of an inpatient locked unit, as we were proposing here, if we have a client who says, you know what, I don't want to be here, but we look at you and say, I'm sorry, we feel that you're at risk of harming yourself or someone else, we have the right to say you're not leaving us. And that's probably the biggest difference between this type of facility we operate versus a lot of the other types of services we operate. But once we clinically say that you are stable and that you are doing fine and you're safe to return home, we could recommend to you, we would love to see you go to a rehab program because we think you would benefit from that. But legally, there's no legal way to say to somebody, you have to go to rehab program. Now, if you have an individual who is seriously mentally ill, who's not appropriate to be discharged to the community, that's where the state hospital system comes into play. We would then transfer a client historically to Taunton State Hospital, and now most of the beds, majority of the beds have moved now over to Worcester. And so that would be a special discharge disposition for a group of clients that are really need to be in long-term care.
So I suppose a full lockdown facility has less risk than an unlocked facility.
You know, ironically, you're right. I mean, I know it almost seems counterintuitive, but if you stop and think about the services from a perspective of, if your concern is, you know, you run the establishment down the street, and you know, you are concerned who your customers are, so to speak, a locked facility certainly is much easier to manage and do discharge planning that in a traditional public facility that's unlocked, where, again, you know, if someone is healthy enough, safe enough to make a decision, you may not like the decision they're making, but they have the right to make that decision. In a locked facility, the reason that they're in a locked facility because they're at a point in crisis that they really aren't able to make a good decision. So yeah, I'm glad you actually pointed that out, because ironically, people would think that the opposite would be better if we operated, and certainly we have the capacity to open up to operate an unlocked facility at the site, but from the perspective of site management and being in the neighborhood, ironically, a locked site, you'll be shocked how quiet a locked site is. And if you look at a lot of the locked facilities around the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and abutting states, I mean, they're very often are located, you know, in the hearts of actually very nice areas. And they tend to be quiet facilities, because the reality is, unlike an unlocked facility, there's no ground privileges where, you know, if you're healthy enough to be walking around and socializing, you know, around the grounds, you'd be healthy enough to go home. So it does take a little bit of wrapping around, okay, and trying to understand the level of care and service.
Is High Point privately held?
We're a public charity.
Okay.
And Southeast Regional Network is also a public charity.
I was interested in whether or not, you said you've been doing this for, what, 29 years?
Yes.
So do you keep a record or documentation of incident rates by type of patient, incident rates by locked, unlocked, incident rates by geography, or do you keep any of that data?
We keep a lot of discharge type data. You know, we've been operating a locked facility for 7 years, and as far as like a community negative, you know, like a community negative incident where someone left our facility and harmed somebody type of incident, we have no incident where someone left our facility and went down the street and, you know, became front page news, so to speak, from leaving an inpatient locked facility.
Give us some examples of what might happen.
I mean, you know, because I mean, I really, if you kind of Google the newspapers, and ironically, we do a huge number of admissions every year, you're really not going to find press on incidents on us. Certainly, people leaving community detox who decide not to finish their addiction treatment, I mean, the natural thing they're going to do would be go out to a bar, and quite frankly, 4 days earlier, before they came to us to begin their detox, they were more than likely at that same bar. So the intervention that we offered them and attempted to do, obviously, they decided they didn't want to pursue that intervention and seek treatment, at that time. But you have to remember that regardless of level of care, every person who walks in my door of either a locked facility or unlocked facility was in the community the day before they got to me. You know, it's not like you're coming from prison or you're just, kind of just appearing. I mean, everyone that we treat was in the community before they got to us. But I really don't have, fortunately, I don't have a list of incidents that that we've had problems with folks. Like I said, we have an elementary school next door to us. I mean, Little League fields, the daycare center. I mean, we have what I would call very sensitive neighbors, so to speak, of those type of establishments so close to us. And we've been able to, work for 25 years, in our neighborhood. In fact, we do a lot of prevention work in the community. In Plymouth, we actually run an organization called Communities Mobilizing for Change, where we do work with adolescents around underage drinking. We run services. Right now, we just did a new initiative we're doing in the Brockton area about prescription drug abuse. A lot of young folks today are getting involved in taking parents' and grandparents' prescriptions, and trying to do education in those areas. We do a lot of community work. Quite honestly, if you look at the impact that we make in the community, it's pretty substantial. But from my perspective, it's extremely substantial in a positive way. We're a member of dozens of coalitions. We work with a lot of tough issues. We actually run the South Shore Women's Resource Center. It's a domestic violence center that actually services the town of Middleborough, where we have counselors in all the courts in our area. So if someone is a victim of domestic violence, when you come into court, we're there. If you go to the emergency room at Jordan as a victim, we're there. We run a lot of other types of prevention services too. We do work with teen dating, violence, certainly a lot of work in the area of substance abuse, because that is at the heart of our mission. We just trained a couple of our staff to begin offering mental health first aid, to work with communities, residents of communities, fire departments, police departments, around working with folks with mental illness, because there's a lot, there's certainly on the mental illness side and the addiction side both, there's a lot of misunderstanding, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of stigma. But quite frankly, the end of the day, if you look at the individuals as individuals and folks, there's a lot of good folks out there that seek treatment, do well in treatment, and go on to be great parts of the community. And because we've been doing it so long, I mean, I run into people at every level of employment and every level inside communities that have been treated by our organization and are doing extremely well and are giving back to their communities. So, I know it's, at first glance, having us come to town is tough to kind of wrap your head around, but quite honestly, if you look at all the things that we do to make communities better and safer and healthier, I think you'll find us to be an excellent partner to work with.
Can you measure your success?
We can measure our success from as far as successful treatment goes, as far as folks completing treatment. Ironically, we run, like I said, we run community detoxes, and we run 2 facilities that are called Section 35 civil commitment detoxes, one called the Men Addiction Treatment Center, one called the Women's Addiction Treatment Center. Folks who go into the community detox side, from year to year, 65 to 70% of the folks who go to community detox will complete detox. On the civil commitment side, because it's a civil commitment, even though you can ironically walk out. It's normally like 97 to 98% complete their detox. On the rehab side, on the community side, or community rehabs, it runs around 70%. And on the Section 35 side, it runs a bit over 90%. If you look at treatment for addiction or mental illness, quite honestly, I know a lot of folks don't stop and really think about it, but if you look at the interventions for addiction and mental illness, they actually are pretty much in line with other types of chronic illnesses, dealing with folks that are wrestling with diabetes, compliance rates. If you look at folks who go in to a hospital because they had a heart attack, if you look at compliance rates for a lot of the more complex medical specialties, you really won't find that treatment for mental health and addictions are outliers, even though for some reason the question that you asked is a very common question that's asked. I think people are always surprised to find out that, why we're a specialty area of healthcare, we really aren't any different than other parts of healthcare.
Bill?
Yes. For the petitioner, do you have security staff on duty at all times?
We actually have never had a need to have a formal security staff, quite honestly, which may sound kind of strange, but quite honestly, we are very heavily staffed, and it's a secure facility. The doors are locked, the windows are secure, so you can't physically leave the unit. All our staff are trained in crisis intervention, so we do have the ability with our staff. We don't have specially security guards, so to speak. They're in our medical facility. Ironically, a lot of general hospitals do. Ironically, but we really have never had a need for that. In fact, I just came from another meeting earlier today where we were looking at restraint data, which obviously, if you have a client that is not doing well and is acting out in treatment, obviously in a psychiatric hospital, what you would end up doing is having to do a restraint. And for all of last year, we only had to do 5 restraints for the whole year, literally where we had to hold a client down for any period of time. And our goal, quite frankly, is to operate at a level of 0 restraints, that by using interventions as medication and counseling to be totally restraint-free. Now, if you look at the facility, we will have what we call a restraint room, or a quiet room, or seclusion room for a crisis. But we are very grateful that it's very rare that we ever even use that room. And we've been tracking that data for years. And one of our goal is every year to make it go down lower and lower. And we're really hoping to be at 0. And the 5 restraints I'm referring to could have been the same person more than one time. I actually, when they gave me the yearly numbers, I didn't ask, was it 5 different people or 2 people, 1 3 times and 1 twice. But certainly, if there was a need, we obviously would provide. We want to keep the staff safe. We want to keep the clients safe. We want to keep the community safe. So, if there was a need, obviously, we would not be opposed to that. But at this particular point, we have not found a need for formal security.
Well, how about if this petition is granted, that you consider having security people on staff, and over a period of time, if it finds that they're not necessary and our community is safe, then you can release them?
Well, honestly, resources are so scarce, and I can show you the data that we have never needed security. Certainly, if something comes up that there's concerns, I would obviously be more than happy to come back and discuss it. But if you look at, we've been doing this enough years that, from our own experience, we would have security if we needed security. And I should have done like an area view of our facility where it's at. in Manamet today is extremely densely populated. You know, we do a huge amount of free services, and honestly, there's so many folks who do not have access to healthcare and insurance. I mean, this past year we did $1,800,000 in free services. And from my perspective, it's a better use of dollars to provide services to folks who otherwise would have great difficulty receiving services versus investing in something that is not going to enhance the safety of the community or the facility. But certainly, you find, and anyone who knows me, you find I'm a very reasonable person and will always try to work with folks. At the same time, I try to use, you know, our resources to do the most good we can with them. I mean, there's just so much need that needs to be met, and never enough dollars to do all the things that you'd like to do to make, you know, to make the clients comfortable and keep the doors open and access open for anyone regardless of ability to pay for services.
Well, I wish you would give it some consideration, considering one of the neighbors is a church and another one is a child care center.
Yep. And
please give us some.
Oh, absolutely. And ironically, it just so happens those are two of my current neighbors also. Just coincidentally, if you look at it, it's Tiny Town. Tiny Town is the daycare center, and the Tiny Town daycare center has been across the street from me for the last 27 years in Manamet. And Indian Brook Elementary School is the elementary school, and that's been there. And the church has been there our whole life also. So it just so happens we have identical neighbors where we're at now. But certainly, you know, we will reach out to the church and the daycare in the neighborhood and talk with them. I know some other folks in sight actually have chatted with some of the folks across the street, because I know, you know, they've asked about using the parking lot like on Saturday mornings and things like that. So, you know, there has been some communication with the folks. And again, you know, we do want to be a good neighbor.
Before we open up the meeting for public questions or comments, I think it would be in our best interest to read the letters into the record.
Sure.
And then we'll allow the public to address any concerns they may have, and then you'll have an opportunity to respond to those. And I assume, based upon what's in these written letters, you'll have a little to-do list, and then we'll move on from there, okay?
Sure, that's fine. Thank you.
Oh, here you go. That's what she's going to read in now. Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
This.
Subject, High Point Treatment Center, 1322, 52 Oak Street, Middleborough, Assessors Map 50N, Lot 5216, Honorable Board. I reviewed the petition submitted by Southeast Regional Network, who leased to High Point Treatment Center, Inc., relative to their request to allow the renovating of the former St. Luke's Hospital for a 72-bed psychiatric hospital and outpatient clinic with 200 employees over 3 shifts. I offer the following. 1, the proposed use may not be a use available as of right. 2, the enclosed floor plans do not include the second floor of the building. 3, the proposed number of parking spaces on site is 98. 4, the Middleborough zoning bylaw parking table, which was attached to the original memo, requires 1 space per 200 square feet of gross floor area, or 3 per medical practitioner, whichever is greater. The Board of Assessors lists the building as having a combined finished floor area, basement, first floor, second floor, of 64,965 square feet. This would require the site to have 325 spaces. 5, the proposed facility will have 200 employees over 3 shifts. changes? Where will the employees park during shift changes with 98 spaces? I would not support this request until the items have been resolved. Respectfully submitted, Robert J. Whalen, Building Commissioner. This is from the Middleborough Fire Department. Dear Board, I understand that you will be meeting tonight, August 22nd, 2013, at 7:30 p.m. on the proposed High Point Treatment Center, 52 Oak Street, Middleborough, Mass., number 4 on your agenda. I respectfully request that your board take into consideration the impact of this type of facility will have on the Middleborough Public Safety agencies, fire, police, and EMS. I am concerned that a facility of this type will significantly increase emergency responses, taxing our already stretched out resources. The Plymouth, Massachusetts Fire and EMS agencies have experienced an increase in emergency responses over the past 3 years to the High Point Treatment Center of Plymouth, approximately 175 responses per year, not including a contracted ambulance's responses. As you may or may not know, the Middleborough Fire Department has been operating with the same staffing level since 1985, while experiencing significant increases in responses, over 40% increase since 2007. The fire department does a tremendous job at answering the needs of the community with a very limited staff. I am, however, concerned that with the continued increase in emergency responses, without staff and resource increases, we are being extended beyond our means. I thank you in advance for your consideration. Respectfully, Lance Benjamino, Chief of the Department.
Okay, there's one more letter to read in, and this one's from the Planning Board, related to the High Point Treatment Center. Honorable Board, you have requested comments from the Planning Board for the issuance of a special permit regarding the proposed High Point Treatment Center to be located in the former St. Luke's Hospital building on Oak Street. I'm familiar with the proposed use and offer the following initial observations. High Point is a lockdown treatment facility for patients with drug abuse and various mental health issues. These patients are usually required to find treatment at the facility through hospital, doctor, or other committing entities. It's my understanding that treatment programs are for up to 1 week. However, patients may be discharged whenever the facility believes they're ready. Patients are treated on-site with various drug therapies and may be released with drugs in their systems and with a full supply of whatever prescription drugs they have been prescribed to them in their pockets. High Point has informed the town that they endeavor to provide transportation for the individual to reach their home. However, they cannot require a patient to go home or to go anywhere specific. Because of HIPAA, family members may not be called when patients are to be released, so that they can be picked up and cared for at the release. It is very likely that in many circumstances, patients could choose to leave the facility and walk the streets of downtown Middleborough, whether they are from Middleborough or not. This may be a hazard to the patient and to the residents of the area. If some of these individuals are homeless, the streets of Middleborough may become their home. With respect to zoning issues, it appears that there is not adequate parking on the site. Architectural plans should be provided as required by the Business District zoning bylaw. Lighting and neighborhood buffers may be required. I would be happy to provide further comment when more information is available. Sincerely, Ruth Joffrey, Planning Director.
The thing I'd like to do now is just to have our attorney, John Whitten, come up and address the board in anything in terms of concerns or things that you'd just like to throw out for consideration. Podium is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, members of the board. Mr. Chairman, the applicant doesn't seem to contest the requirement of both site plan review and the need for a special permit. So I was prepared to address that matter. With that not in contention, I would say and advise the board to treat this applicant and application like you would any other special permit in the business district. It triggers the need for a special permit under at least 2 categories, and the board should be mindful of that in its deliberations. Under the first category, the applicant has testified that this is a charitable organization, so that in and of itself is the triggering mechanism for a special permit in the business district. The other triggering mechanism, which the building commissioner has identified, is it's a pre-existing non-conforming structure. The St. Luke's Hospital has been abandoned, according to the town's records, by at least 15 to 20 years. So there's no question that the parcel and the structure has no current zoning protection. So the board needs to treat this application as if this were a new structure, a new application. Certainly can take into consideration the fact that there is a structure there and it's going to be rehabilitated. But in terms of applying zoning, all zoning bylaws in the town of Middleborough apply to this structure, to this lot, to this application. A related piece, Mr. Chairman, is I had anticipated perhaps that the applicant might argue that there was a categorical exemption under zoning, Chapter 40, Section 3. The applicant hasn't made that presentation, and I think that's well advised because there is no categorical exemption from zoning. So this application is a permitted use pursuant to the special permit requirements of the bylaw. The board has really 2 things it has to accomplish. One is it has to apply the site plan review standards, and then it has to find the affirmative criteria to grant a special permit. It's a supermajority vote, so the board is really just thinking in as it would for any special permit application. So the board has the right to require peer review fees. The board has the right to require plans that both the building commissioner and the planning director suggested, the fire chief, the police chief, those kind of responses. The board has the authority to impose those as new information as well as conditions of approval if the board believes this project can be conditioned to meet the requirements of the zoning bylaw.
Any questions from the board for Mr. Whitten?
Yeah, I guess so. You're saying then that we have complete right over the entire permit application right through the finish?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there's no question. As I was saying, Mr. Freitas, the only anticipation I had from the applicant was a claim either that it was a pre-existing non-conforming structure and therefore the board had no jurisdiction in the special permit area. The applicant hasn't suggested that, and again, I think that's well advised because that wouldn't be a correct statement. Or that the applicant claimed that this is an exempt use under zoning. Again, not well advised, and it doesn't sound like the applicant is pursuing that. So the board needs to treat this application as if it were a traditional special permit application under the zoning bylaw.
The second part that you mentioned, I'm not sure that I really completely understand that. And I believe that there are either a 501c3 or something similar to that. Is that not correct?
I would assume if they're a charitable corporation, they probably do have the tax status of a 501c3. That itself is not dispositive under zoning. It's not a religious institution, church, synagogue, other religious institution. It's not an educational institution, and it doesn't qualify under the so-called Dover Amendment exceptions from zoning. So there are no exceptions, in my opinion, under zoning, either the Middleborough bylaw or the state code, to which a nonprofit hospital or medical facility can apply.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Attorney Whitten? Thank you, John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Appreciate it. Are there any follow-up questions from the board, or if not, we can move to any general questions and comments from the audience?
Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
This has been brought up in the letters. It's a question that I started kind of asking myself as I was looking at the handicapped parking spaces and their locations. I am very concerned about parking and parking in this area. There is not a lot of street parking. It's a very residential area. I remember in our last visitation to this property, the fights we had over parking and drainage, which was another issue. I'm really, really concerned with parking and accessibility for this particular site.
Okay. Thank you. Joe?
Well, I had a little concern about that myself, and in looking at the map, it seems to me that there may be an opportunity to expand the parking area with probably at least 20 spaces, and that would be to take the area that you have circled, unless there's a reason why it can't be done. If there's a reason why it can't be done, please tell me. But the pedestrian walkway where it goes into the entrance to the building, it seems to me that that could be removed, and at least 2 lanes of traffic, of parking could be added across the front of the building. And I'm just wondering if that's something that you've thought about, or if you could think about and perhaps get back to us on. Yeah.
Certainly, we have no problem with reviewing the parking and meeting with the building department to discuss the parking and reappear and address the parking concerns. I mean, based upon, other properties and like size, number of beds we operated, from our experience, we found the number of beds and number of parking spaces actually work out fine. But in the same token, we have no problem with reviewing it, and certainly welcome your suggestion about, because that whole loop rotary thing really is not overly useful to begin with, because you go up there, when you drive up there, besides dropping someone off at the front door, there really isn't much functional use of it.
Right.
So thank you, and
Well,
we'll be fine to look at
one
that.
of the questions that sort of raised my antenna originally was the handicap parking, because there was only 4 listed, which I thought, if we have 98, that's only 4. To a hospital, wheelchairs. And then I saw where they were located on all the maps. And I thought to myself, where is the entrance? And how does one get into the building? And I was under the impression that, and it may be federal requirement, that handicap parking spaces have to be closest to the door, the main entrance? Am I wrong in this?
That's a good question, but, I mean, the building commissioner would certainly be the one to
Right.
address the layout of the parking, the number of spaces, and the
Well,
number of handicaps,
that-
so, yeah.
And certainly, we could certainly look at that with the building.
That
That's
got
not a
my-
problem.
well,
We'll do that
it
with the
got my
building. Sure.
questioning, because, yes, I understand about locked facilities. Heaven knows I worked in one for many a year. Mine was a prison.
Sure.
And I certainly dealt with mentally ill individuals and individuals with substance abuse issues.
Absolutely.
The first many years that I worked for the Department of Correction, we had the addiction center
Yep.
at Bridgewater,
Yep, very familiar with
which
it.
was an alcoholic treatment program, which were voluntary commitments. And it was not unusual for us to walk in to find drunks holding themselves up as they voluntarily committed themselves for 30 days because it was getting cold outside.
Sure. I'm very familiar with Mass Act.
So, I knew the old Mass Act,
Yeah.
not the new one. Believe me, it has improved. But I'm a little concerned. I'm also a little concerned because I have a lingering question in my head, 2 questions.
Sure.
One is, this building has been standing empty for 15 years? 10 years? More or less?
Yeah.
I'm not absolutely sure.
But definitely in that range, so, yes.
And the last time we had a proposal about this building, the neighbors were very insistent upon drainage and water coming off of the property. And I cannot remember whether or not something was actually done. So that's another concern, because part of the parking lot, I believe, gets flooded, if I remember the neighbors' complaints at that time.
Yeah, that's,
But-
Yeah,
but it- but
certainly
it
if
is-
there, if we could
but
find,
it- but
locate a
this-
problem
right,
with it,
but
certainly.
this
Sure.
is going to be a concern, and
Yeah.
it's the kind of thing that kind of rears up
Yeah.
and bites you when you think, oh, everything is done.
Sure, and then definitely, I mean, we wouldn't want a situation that in the middle of the parking lot, we have a humongous puddle every time it rains, because that certainly would not be very welcoming for either
No.
visitors or the staff working there.
Mr. Diegler, you had a question.
Yes, sir, one more. The parking spaces are 10 by 20, correct?
10 by 20?
That's the standard in this town.
Those in the large parking lot, we reconfigured, we went with the zoning board requirement here. Anson Chloride, AC Architect, I'm working with High Point to make this building work. And the large parking lot, yeah, we went with the, was it the 10 by 20 spaces? So they're generous. The existing, they were like 8'6" by 18. And so there were 111 total parking spaces with that layout, with a diagonal one-way traffic. We now have two-way traffic meeting the 24-foot wide lanes that are requested, and we totaled the 98. We located 4 handicap spaces, the most, next to the entry for the outpatient clinic, where we'd have the most traffic. The other handicap spaces are located in other parking areas. Area 1, I think we have 1 handicap, Area 2, and I believe those areas might be more employee parking. Some visitors.
But the reality is, we certainly have the letter about reviewing all the parking, so definitely as part of that, we will review the number and location of handicap spaces.
Absolutely, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it. So, at this point in the hearing, what I'd like to do is open it up to the abutters, residents. The only requirement is that you come to the podium and you state your name and address and ask a question or whatever the case may be. And if the petitioner would like to take the microphone here to respond, that's okay too. The only thing I'm going to ask you to do is you're addressing the board, not one another, and we're not talking over each other. It's always awesome when you have this number of people come out because it's an emotional and passionate thing that we're doing here. So it's good that we as a town are embracing it together. So with that said, the floor is yours. Just your name and address.
Chris Wainwright, 54 Pearl Street. I have a couple of questions. One, I'm curious on what outpatient is. What does that mean? Is that what, drug rehab? Is that methadone? What exactly is outpatient? And will this facility be seeking in the future to be one of those forensic places like you were saying? If you don't plan on doing that, would you agree to maybe signing something with the town that you won't seek that in the future, so we don't get like Charles Manson living across the street here?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. I have no problem about doing whatever we need to do from a town relationship about the forensic. I honestly don't even know what the requirements are to operate a forensic facility, but certainly it's not within the scope of the mission of our company. So I am very comfortable with that. As far as the outpatient services, we will not be a methadone. We will not be providing methadone services as part of our outpatient services. What we will be providing is traditional outpatient counseling. We would operate on a traditional substance abuse license, which does not allow you to dispense methadone at all. To dispense methadone, you need a special narcotic treatment program license. And to do that, your clinic needs to be designed much different than our clinic. Our clinic is not designed with that in mind, so it's not even close to that type of compliance, and it's not part of our scope of plans or services. The 2 licenses that we would operate underneath, one would be Department of Public Health, Healthcare Quality. for operating a mental health clinic, and the scope of services in a mental health clinic would be traditional outpatient counseling, outpatient groups, and psychiatry. And then the other licenses would be a traditional substance abuse license, and that would be to do substance abuse counseling and substance abuse groups. We do provide services for first offender drunk driving. So if there's enough need for a group here in town, we would do that. If there's not enough need, we wouldn't do that. We operate clinics all around the Middleborough area, so we really don't have any. And if you look at, and certainly we're happy to share them with you, if you look at the size of the clinic, it's extremely small intentionally, because the reality is most people who want services close to home. So people don't drive for many miles to go to clinic services. The other part of our intent would be to provide primary care services, general internal medicine, family medicine type services for folks who are coming to the clinic if they so choose to receive any primary care services with us.
My other question would be, what kind of, would there be cameras or anything installed in this facility? One problem I have, I can tell you with experience, is that I've lived right behind the Parish Hall parking lot for 10 years.
Yeah.
I know, you probably know they have like NA and all these
I
other
do.
programs
Yes, I
at
do.
the Parish Hall.
Yes.
And while drug rehab may work for some people, other people go there to share drugs with other people, or it's a good place to pick up drugs.
Mm-hmm.
I get hypodermic needles around my property, and what are you
Sure.
going to do are you going to install video cameras? Are you going to try and police this?
I mean, ironically, we do use video cameras. We think cameras are a great deterrent. We also think they're great to review what's going on, let it be the parking lot or inside the facility. So, we just find it's a prudent thing to do. We have never had an issue because of the nature of our services. People who do not want to be in treatment, won't come to us. They're in the community. So, you won't find people hanging in our parking lots or, coming to the facility because we are very diligent on policing our property, and certainly video cameras is part of the scope of that. We actually record our video cameras.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And just before you leave the podium, just so that you know, we're working on another petition that has stated that there will not have a forensic treatment program as well. And so what we do is we make that an order and part of the condition of the special permit process. So on the other permit, they're not allowed, ever, to be a forensic facility.
And that's fine with us also.
Right, and that's an order and the condition for the special permit. So, and if that were to try to change, they would have to come before the board. So it's a nice way of tying up their offer of not having a forensic facility as making it part of the order and the condition of the approval.
That'd be great. I mean, a lot of times you get something, and then a couple of years down the road, it's not the same thing you bargained for.
Understood.
Thanks.
Understood.
Mr. Chairman, I just want an accounting clarification. When Norman asked if they could have extra guards available, he indicated that he did not have the profit margins, as there was $1.8 million provided in free services. I would like to know what free services, is that free to the people that are getting it, and whether or not if he receives any reimbursement or tax benefit as a result of providing those services?
Great question. The first part first. The issue around security guards, we certainly financially have the ability to hire security guards if a security guard was needed. We are a healthy company financially. Our financials are public, so they are available. The question of free care, when we're referring to free care, it's truly that we're getting no government reimbursement for those services. We certainly provide a lot of services at a company that are free to the client but are being reimbursed by Department of Public Health. So we do have funding, for instance, at our detox and rehab facilities for folks that are indigent. But in the case of, ironically, in the case of inpatient beds, there is no free care pool or other mechanism to receive any additional funds, and we provide those services as part of our mission.
I just want simple clarification. When he stated he provides $1.8 million in free services, is that 100% free on his end, and is that how much it actually costs them? Because it's very misleading the way, and that
Okay.
answer was still misleading.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to be.
Does it cost you
Yeah.
$1.8 million through the chairman?
Okay. I guess the best way, I'm trying to make sure I answer it as accurately as possible. The beds that we've given away for free, no one's paying for the bed. Obviously, if another client would have, if we didn't take that client and we filled the bed with somebody else who had insurance, we would have gotten the same dollars for that. So basically, by providing the amount of free care we do, we are forgoing the opportunity to actually sell that bed to someone who has insurance. There's a large number of folks with insurance that we turn away from services every day because we try to be open for all folks seeking services. So our staff, because our facilities, there's such need for services, our facilities always have more folks seeking services than we have ability to provide. So I don't know if that answers your question, but so. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, through you, he's a businessman. It's a very simple question. Does a $1.8 million cost you $1.8 million?
I guess the best way to answer would be yes, because we're forgoing filling that bed with someone who would pay for it otherwise. Thank you.
Father John Sheridan, I'm the new pastor over at Sacred Heart, 320 Center Street. Sacred Heart is not like any other church I've ever worked in. It is a very busy, busy community. It's not your usual church. We've got stuff going on all day, all night, constantly. I don't know about the Church of Manamet. What are the hours that you had in mind for this outpatient clinic?
I mean, normally the clinic would, if folks need to come in normally 8 or 9 in the morning already, if there's a need for appointments, and normally would close by like 8 o'clock in the evening. Again, if you look at the amount of offices dedicated, it's not a large part of the operation. It actually, this resides in the lower level of the facility, and it's really just geared towards folks in the area that are looking for services. But it's not a large community, so therefore it's not a large clinic. But normally a clinic of that size, there probably going to be like 5 or 6 counselors working, so which means there'd only be, if our appointments are normally an hour long for counseling, that there'd be 5 or 6 clients every hour coming in to be seen if they're fully booked. So it's not like a huge flow of folks, so to speak, coming in for most of the services. The psychiatrist appointments are certainly shorter, but normally there's only one psychiatrist working at a time. So a psychiatrist appointment would normally see about 3 clients an hour, but the flow is actually very low.
Is it 7 days a week? Do you have in mind?
Not normally Sundays. It just most folks do not. There's really not a demand for Sunday appointments, and certainly we do not. I wouldn't anticipate that actually it would be open late every evening. Again, because it's not a large community. I would expect we'd probably be open 2 or 3 even till about 8 o'clock, but I could see closing earlier other nights. In fact, there's not enough, we would try to meet the need, but we don't anticipate the need to be greater than what we have in mind. And certainly the building, ironically, why it seems like a large building, there's a fair amount of space in the basement that really isn't suitable for providing services in. So the clinic is rather small.
If it's possible, I'd like to get a copy of the information so we can look at it as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'm Bruce Gates, Precinct Street, Chief of Police. I'm going to give you some information that I've come up with, and then I do have some questions I want to ask Dan, and then I'll express my concerns.
Thank you, Chief. Is this one packet, Chief?
Yeah.
All right.
There was a lot of trees to be killed, so. One of the questions I had was, under the 104 CMRs, what type of license is this facility?
The inpatient facility be licensed by Department of Mental Health,
Right.
and the outpatient clinics would be licensed underneath Department of Public Health.
Okay, and what class would those be under, the types of licenses?
The type of license for all the outpatient service would be a clinic license.
Would be a what?
A clinic license.
Can you tell me, the way I read 104 CMR, there's 5 types of licenses,
Mhm.
class 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Okay, for Department of Mental Health?
Yes.
Okay. Fran, which classes?
6?
Number 6? I can certainly double check that for you. Maybe if I could see them there, maybe,
Yeah. It's okay if I think 6 is for minors.
Class
That's
6, licensed to
5
provide
is.
diagnostic of minors on voluntary commission or voluntary basis. So we definitely would be 6 for the 1 unit, for the 14-bed unit. Licensed to provide diagnostic of adults on involuntary community status under, yes. So it'd be 4 for the adults, 6 for the kids, and then the outpatient clinic would be underneath Department of Public Health clinic license.
And that would be like a class 2?
But actually, Department of Public Health is a totally different licensing system, so I don't know if they have classes the same way, but I can certainly provide you a copy of the rate for public health.
Thank you.
Sure.
One other question I had, do you allow visitors there?
Yes, we do.
Do you have set visitor hours?
Within reason, but certainly if, if a family has to work, quite frankly, we'd work with the family, because if someone wants to come down and visit, we want to be accommodating, but we definitely try to have set visiting hours, but it's like anything else, we try to make sure families can come in and see a family member.
Okay, and the Plymouth facility that's down in Manomet, that's located at 1233 State Road.
That is correct.
Now, you say the patients that are going to be coming to this facility are from our community. Does that mean they're only going to be from a few blocks away from?
No, absolutely not. No, most of the folks would come from the region, but certainly, it's interesting, the Department of Mental Health does not give statistics by community. Ironically, I was able to look at Department of Public Health for substance abuse services, and the last public information that was available, Middleborough had 329 residents of Middleborough who received services at a publicly health funded facility from Middleborough for the last year. That information is available, but there's not a like report that I've ever been to find from the Department of Mental Health that would tell you the amount of folks in the community that would utilize services.
Okay, because you also mentioned that you have a huge number of admissions. So
As an agency, because we have over 20 sites, yes.
So when you refer to the region that these people are going to be, can you define the region for me, please?
Well, for us, the region, the state of Massachusetts actually divides itself into regions for the purposes of planning. And the majority of our region would be considered Southeast Massachusetts, would extend a little bit below Route 128 over to Route 95 and then down through the Cape. That is the historic southeast region of Massachusetts that I'm referring to.
So certainly the patients are not from Middleborough, all going to be from Middleborough.
Oh, no, absolutely not. The only place where the majority of clients would be from Middleborough would be on the outpatient side. But in the inpatient side, we would get referrals from all the general hospitals throughout this region.
All right, now, just to refresh my memory also, you also said you can't dictate how they are released.
I can't dictate what their plan. I can't force them to go, once they are medically cleared by our staff, I legally can't tell somebody who is medically cleared what service they need to go to next.
Thank you.
Certainly.
This packet that I provided for the board here, I did a little research. I spoke with some of the superior officers in the town of Plymouth, police officers. Their calls for service there, quite frankly, they said this is one of the biggest service drains on their town. They provide so many services to this facility. Now, I gave you a copy of their call volume for the last 4 years. 2000 and up to today, 160 calls. 2012, 207. 2011, 214. 2010, 166. And as you can see on the printout I gave you, these are only for that 1233 State Road. This doesn't, like Dan said, it doesn't account for what happened at 52 Pearl Street or in Everett Square, because there's really no way of knowing. But I will tell you this, that these police officers have told me that they go, this is a village of Manomet. It's not downtown Middleborough, which is a big walk-in downtown. They have a package store there, and they find these bracelets that are cut off in the trash on the side of the road all the time down there by this package store. And I also want to make sure you are all aware of Everett Square. There's 7 places within a block of this facility that you can buy liquor. Savas Liquors, the Central, the Elks, the Driftwood Lounge, the Hideaway, the Royal Cafe, and the Flatiron. 7 of them within a block of this place. So just, I want you to be aware of that, in case you weren't. These are all licensed establishments. I went over them again this morning just to make sure I was accurate. Just some of the other concerns that they had, along with the manpower drain and the cost of services provided to this, because of a facility that's similar to this. They do have people wander off. Dan's told you that he legally can't dictate where they go. They will wander off. Now, based on my experience, in my years here, I started part-time as a police officer in 1979. And the downtown Middleborough has got a lot better since the 70s and 80s. But people say, oh, there's kids down there now, but if you were here in the 70s and 80s, you'd say it's got a lot better, and it has. We don't have people getting robbed out there and all this other foolishness, nor do we want it. What I found years ago was, I don't want to go on and on, but I'm going a little bit about this. When I was going for my master's degree in the 1980s, the first few years I was a police officer, I realized that all these people that we were bringing in under arrest for the whole gamut of crimes, almost all of them had some type of substance abuse problem, whether it be alcohol, drugs. I even went so far as when I did my thesis back in the 80s, I noticed that all these people we were bringing in, the first thing they'd ask you was, I need a cigarette. And I got to thinking, and it was time to do the thesis, and I went to the prisons, and I did a lot of research on it, and that's what I did my thesis on. And 92% of the people that got arrested were smokers, whereas the rest of the population, it was, at that time, I think 27%. It makes me nervous to have people with substance abuse problems, be it alcohol or drugs, coming into our town, and we, or Dan, High Point, can't dictate how they're released, and there's no legal way to really control them. Now, I understand the need for these facilities, absolutely do. And I'm not saying that, these things shouldn't exist. That'd be foolish on my part. But this facility in downtown Middleborough that the town manager and the economic development, they've got money to try to enhance Everett Square. I don't think this is going to enhance it. You know, and the officers also told me of times where a lot of times people with these type of problems will go to these places to take sanctuary because they get in trouble. And if they go in there, it's like an oasis, because they go down there with restraining orders, with summonses, with arrest warrants, and the staff says, I ain't telling you nothing. It's HIPAA. Okay. But when something goes wrong in there, like when there's no security staff and something goes bad and they need some security, call the local police. You can't get here fast enough. I'm really concerned about having a locked facility, and you lock doors, lock windows. You think they certainly get broke into. I'm sure they could get broke out of. So, like I said, I don't want to go on and on, but just be aware that you got all these liquor facilities up there, and you know, if they're having visitors come in, birds of a feather flock together. And a lot of times these visitors are going to have the same issues, or they're going to be their providers that provide them with their substances. So, and quite frankly, I don't want them coming here. But that's all I'll spout off about for now. I think I got my point across.
Just one point of clarification. The facility in Plymouth, the majority of the beds in Plymouth are addiction beds, not inpatient psychiatric beds. We do run 2 community detox units in Plymouth that, as I mentioned earlier to the board, folks, it's a strictly, both of them are strictly voluntary programs where individuals have the right to walk out the door and, like you said, go down the street if they so choose, and go to a liquor store. Unlike the facility that we were proposing here in Middleborough, would be an inpatient, licensed an inpatient psychiatric facility, which is locked. So there is a large difference between the two. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Well, your project information says, client, psychiatric hospital. Patients must have a psychiatric diagnosis and very often will have a second diagnosis of addictions.
That is correct. Where the facility in Plymouth, the unlocked units, the primary diagnosis is addictions, and they could have a secondary diagnosis of mental health. It's the opposite, where you cannot come to a locked facility with a primary diagnosis of addiction. So the primary has to be mental health. But certainly, I do agree that many folks with a mental health diagnosis definitely would have an addiction problem. All I'm saying is the level of care of a locked facility versus unlocked, and the way discharge is done are much different between the two.
Okay, because it does go on to say the hospital will provide psychiatric stabilization as well as detox services.
Absolutely, that is true. It provides in the lock setting. Thank you.
I'll just, the paperwork I gave you, which references the call volume for the town of Plymouth, I know that facility's a little bit bigger than this proposed one.
It is, yes.
They got a 100-man police department, we don't. And they're slammed with this. It's a huge drain. But if you'll notice on the first page with the pie chart, some of the calls, and like I said, these are just for that address, not the neighborhood or people that wander off. They go from abandoned calls, accidental 911s, assist citizens, attempted summons services, burglary, B&E, check well-being, disturbances, domestics, general services, larceny, medical, missing person, missing property, motor vehicle accidents, parking complaints, police with the ambulances, service of 209As, sex offenses, simple assault, suicide attempts. I could go on and on, but it's all on here, just so you know.
Can you detail for me, Chief, the transfer ambulance? Because that is the lion's share, that's the largest category.
Yeah, that is the largest. And
what is that?
From
what
what I
do you
understand,
actually do?
what I understand talking to them is they'll get a call that somebody's at one of these facilities And now they have a detox problem or a psychiatric problem, but now they got another physical problem. And sometimes it's just a matter of transport, but you're still sending, in Middleborough, every medical call, if we have an officer available, we send them on a medical call. But some of these transfers are involuntary. The person says, I'm not going to the hospital. Yes, you are. They're going to call us. So,
I mean, it's, so the one that had 214 is 104. The one that had 207 calls total was 116. The one that was 160 was 90. The one that was 166 is 78. So when we talk about a tremendous drain on resources, just that one category alone is a killer,
yeah,
let alone...
And that's only for this
Right.
location.
Right, for this location and those periods. So I think your point is well taken. And the other thing that I was struck as I looked through this was the types. They are quite disturbing. Everything from aggravated assault, sexual
And that's what happened
assault.
there.
Yeah. So.
Like I said, I understand the need for these places, but downtown Middleborough is not the place. You know, if it was out in the boondocks somewhere, I'd be a lot more comfortable with it. But in my opinion, it's not the place.
Okay. Thank you.
Hi, Danielle Balker, 111 Rivers Edge Drive. I just want to come up and comment in support of this project. I'm sure that there's a lot of people in here who may not want to admit it, but somewhere in their family, there's somebody who needed the services of this type of facility. I have an extended family member who is currently in treatment at High Point. I had a High Point facility, and I can't say enough about them. He was in a locked facility in Brockton for a while. Now he's in an unlocked facility, and he's doing wonderfully. But we had to wait weeks and weeks and weeks to get him into a facility because there aren't enough beds. And I would have welcomed that here. A couple of years ago, everybody was all welcoming of a casino coming to town. Let's be a little humane. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Melissa Capote. I live on 93 Oak Street. I actually have a question. I too have a sister who has been in and out of High Point in Plymouth. I'm for the whole, we need the beds, we need everything, but I think I'm a little confused. You keep saying that it's mental illness. Does that mean that it's just psychiatric problems, or is there gonna be addicts that need the help?
Oh, no, absolutely. You know, like in my write-up that I gave the board, you know, we run a lot of levels of care, and our the facility will be licensed as a psychiatric facility, but our experience is that a large number of the folks that are admitted for a psychiatric illness also have a secondary diagnosis of addiction. Okay. So certainly, we will have the capacity to detox somebody in the hospital. I'm just trying to clarify that we run 5 community detoxes that are a different level, it's a lower level of care, where folks can come into our community detoxes and literally 2 days into it say, you know, I don't want treatment, and walk out the door. Where in a psychiatric hospital where we're detoxing, you can petition a court if you'd like to leave the facility, but if we feel that you need to be there for treatment, you don't have the ability to literally get up and walk out the door. But we recognize that, you know, a large portion of folks that are treated for mental illness have an addiction issue.
You also say that outpatient, is that the outpatients that are coming into you from over the communities, are they coming there to just get the help? Are they going to be supplied with anything?
No, it's a traditional outpatient office that if you came there and you seen a psychiatrist, you were depressed, they could write you a script for your depression. You go to the local CVS and fill it. But we wouldn't be providing medications in the outpatient department that you would come there, receive a medication, and go home. Okay. It is a traditional outpatient service.
And you also say it's a locked unit.
Yes.
So again, I've had experience with High Point,
sure.
And from my sister being involved.
Sure.
She walked off property.
Because she was unlocked. The majority of our units are unlocked.
Right.
That is correct.
I totally understand that.
Yes.
So when you lock all of these people in there, they don't get to go outside and enjoy the fresh air. And if they do you have somebody with them to make sure they're not walking off and
You-
cutting bracelets off and doing whatever?
You, as a locked facility, you would never walk the grounds on your own. It's a nature of the level of care. Again, in our community facilities, we have a volleyball court out back, we have basketball out back. You have a bad day playing basketball, and you want to go home, you can go home.
Yes,
So
I've
it's,
been
so we do in Plymouth, in the front end of the facility where the locked unit is, they do have an outside area that's totally fenced in and enclosed, that staff would go out with clients into that small area, but there's no such thing as ground privileges or walking the grounds at
So
all.
your plan here in Middleborough is not to have that? They would be in and locked in, and that is...
Yeah, in
until
fact,
they're ready to be released to
The
home?
the other thing is, yeah, we're making it a smoke-free,
Okay.
a smoke-free facility, because obviously trying to get folks to give up nicotine is a great thing to do, but also the logistics of being a facility that allows smoke would be much more complex, given the amount of land that the facility is housed on.
My last question is, so when you say that you release them when they're ready to go, again, in my own experience, I have a sibling that is an addict for
Sure.
27 years.
Yep. Mhm.
So you say to them, okay, you're ready to go home, you're ready to go to this rehab, to this place, to whatever it is you need to go to. How do you know that they're going there? I could come and pick up my
Yep.
sister and say, I'm bringing her home, and
Yep.
drop her off down the street.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So,
and if you
do you
pick...
do follow-ups? Do you...
If they go into we have 6 outpatient clinics, they're going to one of our clinics. But if you, as a family member, pick someone up and they were going to another provider, no, it'd be up to your family member to decide, do I want to keep my follow-up appointment or not, just like any other medical service. If they're going, like stepping down inside our organization, we literally would transfer from to the other, so we know they get there. But certainly, once someone is safe to be in the community, they obviously, have the right to decide what they're going to do in that community.
Thank you.
Sure.
Bob Dunphy, 4 Burnway Drive. Chief Gates did an excellent job of comparing an unlocked facility with a locked facility. Does your organization have any other locked facilities that are similar to the one like you're going to put in here?
Only the one in Plymouth. We have 105 beds in Plymouth. There's 5 inpatient units. 4 of them are unlocked, and 1 is locked. So that is the total extent of our locked beds. Everything else throughout our locations is considered unlocked.
So in order to compare this facility well with the one that you have, it would be good if Chief Gates could somehow segregate the calls that are to the locked facility, which is what you're looking at putting in here,
Yes.
with what, because right now you're not comparing apples to apples.
That is correct. There are different levels of care.
And the second point I'd like to make is a Middleborough resident. That property has been an eyesore for at least 15 years. And as a small business owner, somebody willing to drop $10 million into the Middleborough economy hopefully will make a decent impact. Also, you're talking about hiring 150 new staff, and hopefully some of that will come from Middleborough. And I hope that you use Middleborough resources when you require things done at your facility. So from a strictly economic standpoint, I think that it would be a benefit to the community. One of the other concerns that I've heard many times is the parking problem. If we don't go through with this, there won't be a parking problem because it'll be the same rundown place that it is today, same graffiti-driven hole that it is right now, same drain on the community. One of the other questions I'd like to ask Chief Gates is how many times he has to answer calls to this facility where it is now, where people have broken windows, graffiti, drug use on the property, whereas it's an abandoned building. How has that impacted the community as it is today with absolutely no return to the community? Thank you.
Good evening. Bob Whalen, Middleborough Building Commissioner. I just had two questions. On the proposed site plan, there is an enclosed yard, so you're not going to do that now?
We, again, working with your department, we are interested in doing a secure enclosed yard just like we have in Plymouth. But there would be no smoking in the enclosed yard. But it would give some opportunity, not to walk the grounds, but obviously in that limited area, be able to get outside for short periods of time.
Okay, my second question is on the submitted plan, there's nothing for the second floor. Are you not using the second floor?
No, ironically, we didn't realize that the building plans were supposed to be part of the proposal, and we thought it was just a site plan that we needed to submit, and it was, ironically, we accidentally put in the basement in the first floor, and reality is we would have gladly given you the second floor, but I didn't even know the basement and first floor were part of the packet until it was submitted. And by that time, my understanding was the scope of tonight's meeting was the site plan, but certainly I'll be more than happy to make sure before the next time we come back to respond to the letters that you receive all three floors to this committee.
Well, thank you.
Certainly.
Mr. Chairman. Steve McKinnon, 867 Plymouth Street. I've heard some buzzwords that concern me. Indigent, and I've heard locked ward, and I've heard they'll be held in the facility until deemed okay to go back out to society or to another location. When I piece these things together, I'm curious. Are people put in this facility by court order?
Normally, the folks are coming through emergency rooms, and the evaluations are done by a doctor, psychiatrist in an emergency room who does what's called a Section 12. And that Section 12 is someone who's in danger to themselves or someone else. Normally, actually, they're in danger to themselves because of their mental illness. And from there, they would be transferred right to us. They wouldn't go to court as part of that process. Certainly, a court, if someone appears before a court and for some reason a judge, they could be there for a speeding violation, they could be there for any purpose in the courtroom. If someone appears in court and the judge deems that they need to be committed, they could do that, but that's not the normal way somebody comes to the facility. Fran, any idea how often? Yeah, I just want to make sure, but I wasn't aware. I wasn't aware of anyone coming that path, but technically, even in the community, the police department could. Well, it's 12. In the state. Right. Yeah. So the norm, and certainly the norm that we see is almost 100% coming out of emergency rooms versus through other avenues.
So a scenario could be that a homeless person from, say, Brockton, Randolph, Fall River, New Bedford, Hyannis, wherever, could be taken to the emergency room because of mental stress.
Oh, absolutely, sure.
He's homeless.
Yes.
He's determined that he's going to hurt himself.
Mm-hmm.
They Section 12 him.
Yes.
They bring him to Middleborough.
Yes.
And then you determine that he's okay now after a period of time.
Yep.
Certainly.
Yep, no,
and then you say, okay, we're going to give you a taxi ride somewhere, and he says, no, I'm all set. And he walks out the door. And he's now our problem.
Well, ironically, why certainly he has the legal right to do that, the person that you described. Normally, folks don't do that. I am not aware of any growth of homeless folks in Plymouth due to our psychiatric hospital in town. So normally, folks, even if it's someone who's homeless that's associated with a shelter in Hyannis or Brockton, ironically, wants to, normally would prefer to return to the shelter where they reside in versus not in just wandering around the streets.
But they
So
could.
I have not experienced that.
But they could be.
Well, again,
Become residents of
every
Middleborough.
citizen of this country has the right to make their choices of what they want to do.
Certainly.
So I
That's true.
certainly,
It's all about choice, and I
I
understand.
certainly, would acknowledge that they would have that right. I just don't find it something that normally folks do. That's
No,
all.
but it's possible. We have an abnormal town in some ways.
So-
So another buzzword I heard, and I didn't quite understand, the fine attorney spoke about the tax implications. I'm sorry, part of my job is to look at the whole financial picture, and we're talking about a drain on our resources, and I want to make sure that we're at least going to be getting something back from that. So is this facility going to be taxed at the normal rate? I know, that's a silly question, I know, but is it going to be taxed at the normal rate of any facility in our town, or any building in our town?
Yeah, we'd have to find that out, Mr. McKinnon. I don't know that we have the accurate answer, so I would defer that till the
Okay.
next hearing. We'll get an answer for you.
All right. And relative to that, if there is not some type of standard, they're not paying a regular tax rate, is there going to be a services in lieu of taxes payment to the town? I think, given the fact that the police chief, the fire chief are both worried about increased transportation or traffic to the facility, services to the facility. I want to be as generous as the next guy, but we have to take care of the folks too. And we're tying people up. We're going to have to plan for that if this comes to pass. So either way, we have to have something in there. I don't know how that works in Plymouth, and, shame on me for not doing my homework on that, but I'm just concerned that we're going to have a lot more services required, and I want to make sure we get some payment for that. It sounds good, but I think there's a lot of concerns. And
No, understandable. I know.
and there's a lot of concerns that'll come up
proposal. So-
as people start digesting this. One of the things, I know that you've got a lot of information. A lot of people don't have that information. They can't really see that because, we're not mystical. But now some of the police chief stuff may not be able to be put on the web, onto a file in the web. But is it possible that you can put some of this information on the web, on your website, so that people could view it? I only ask because it's kind of a difficult issue, let's say, substantial issue. If it's possible, I'd like to see that. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chairman Priestley, I'm a reformed alcoholic, and I say that only in the context that I don't want people to think that I'm not caring about this. I have gone to High Point facilities and helped people out of there that had absolutely no place to go. And with Danielle Bowker's comment, yes, we all want to be compassionate. I came in here supporting this, but then after hearing this, I'm really questioning as to what is the financial liability upon our town going to be. It's not our residents' responsibility to offset the costs of drug abuse and substance abuse throughout the state. And back when Oak Point was being built, there was, some of you may recall, there was a huge debate over how much Oak Point was going to cost the town because of the tax situations. And we commissioned that the Oak Point had to do a study so that we understood the exact impact upon the financial position of the town with regards to how much revenue was brought in from the Oak Point houses, versus how many facilities they used as compared to residences. And at the end of that analysis, we found out that the town actually made money off of Oak Point because they did not do it, and we also learned how much it costs in revenue. They should be able to provide you with these statistics, and I think that as part of this process, the board should consider having a study commission so that Chief Gates, who gave a very, very nice presentation, I thought, on the town's behalf, can be answered as the chief law enforcement officer, and what Mr. McKinnon just said as selectman, so that we can, as a town, understand what it's going to cost us.
My name is Gail Dunphy, 4 Brenray Drive. I got news for you people. Your taxes are already paying for the mental health of this whole state and the country under Obama's new health care, number one. So get that through your heads. Number two, who here doesn't have a family member or somebody you know with mental health issues? And this problem is not going to go away, whether it's in downtown Middleborough or out in the woods where everybody is safe. I got news for you. I live at the end of Highland Street where the murder took place last month. And that man is mentally ill. You're not safe because a facility is not here. None of us are safe because a facility is not here. However, how lovely is it that we actually could provide help and restore people to a balanced life. And they can become productive members of our society again. This is already costing us millions and millions as a state and as a country. This person has come here to provide an answer. You're either a part of the problem or you're a part of the solution. And what a horrible thing it would be if we were not a part of the solution. This is an opportunity. It will benefit the town in the long run. It will benefit the downtown when the employees go out to eat lunch. It will benefit the downtown when the people coming to visit say, oh, what a beautiful downtown. Look at that little store. I need something. I could pick it up there. I think it'll benefit the town a lot more than a casino would have. Not only will it benefit the downtown, it will benefit our society. And we need to think about it from that perspective. I choose to be a part of the solution. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jennifer Anderson. I live at 51 Meadowbrook Lane. I was born and raised in Middleborough, and I too have family and friends who have been impacted, so I am compassionate to what people have described here, and I'm all about being the solution. But what we're here tonight to talk about is what's best for our town. It's not what's best for my cousin, it's not best for what's my brother, or one of my best friends whose son had been in and out of rehabs all his life. It's not. We should really be looking at the big picture, what's best for our town. I don't feel comfortable with the fact that the metrics that have been shared are loose. You know, it was asked about the statistics of how many incidents. You asked the question, the incidents of what has happened upon discharge or whatnot. The metrics are too loose, and yeah, maybe we can't compare to Plymouth that has locked units and not locked units, but the bottom line is that this is a community of people that are raising children, blue-collar workers. We want our children to be safe. We want this place to be safe. We want to, obviously we want businesses to flourish. Big deal, 150 jobs coming. How many psychiatrists live in Middleborough that are going to benefit from working over there? Number one. Number two, what about all the real estate people that are going to probably be losing work? Because honestly, how many people are going to want to move to a new community that when they hear drug rehab, that's going to throw people away, out the door? I know I built a house in Middleborough. I built it here because I love the community, I love the people. you know, my family's from here, I was born and raised here. I would not build my house here today if there was a drug rehab here. I just wouldn't. It's not something that attracts people into a community. Maybe it would attract somebody who has been touched by it, and so it'd be an easier commute to go visit them. But it belongs maybe in a city, maybe where there's public transportation, so it won't create these huge issues for people who live in a little tiny town. And there's no restaurants really to go eat anyway. So for all the communities or whatever, why don't we work on the town and building the town? Maybe build a new high school, maybe build a community that's going to uplift this town and help the economy and sustain a good economy, rather than, you know, I just hope that we look at that. And I'm surprised that you don't know the tax rate off the top of your head, because to me, you know, running a business, running Middleborough, we need to look at what's the return in Middleborough. Put all the emotion aside, and what's the return in Middleborough, and how is this going to help our community by having that here? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I actually have to say to the board, my name's Wendy Giles, and I live at 74 Forest Street in Middleborough. And I have to say to this board, actually, I'm pretty surprised, and actually I'm really happy that the Board of Selectmen are even here, and the police department, because, you know, June 30th, we sat here with McLean Hospital, and I didn't even have this. So to this board, I want to say thank you for at least listening to this and listen to everything. And actually doing a little more homework, or even please pen this if you have to, from further investigation, because we didn't do that on the last one. And to the people here, you know, in this audience, we're not going to have one facility. We're going to have two in the same local block and on my same street. High Point abuts the back end of my street on Forest Street, and now McLean Hospital will be at the end of it where the greenery is. So I'm not going to have one. I'm going to have two locked facilities. I'm going to have two outpatient rehabs, and that concerns me. I have children on that street. There are 3 school bus stops on that street. There is already, there's some other, you know, other houses on that street that have, you know, mental illness issues, you know, they're outpatient, and it concerns me as, you know, in my area. And we just went through this with, you know, McLean Hospital about the issue about discharge. And, you know, this board actually made some concessions that they would not be discharged to the external public. You'll agree with me, right? We did make that agreement, and so that we made an agreement that they wouldn't. But now High Point is stating that that's not going to happen in their facility. But I just, you know, to go back, I want to say Liz actually made a point about how much violence is in one of these, and I looked it up online, and 60% of all people who work in mental facilities, 60% of workers, anyone who works there, whether you're, you know, a psychiatrist or even a clinician coming in, 60% are assaulted by these people. That's not the community. That's the people who actually work there, 60%. That's a lot, I thought. And then when I actually looked up High Point on the record, Massachusetts actually has an incident report if you actually look it up, but when I actually went to High Point, they hadn't even published theirs. It's not even unpublished. It says, go to the publish. When I went to publish, not available. So to Mr. Priestley, they have not given that information to the public. They're supposed to, under the state of Massachusetts, if you look under mass laws, but they haven't. It's not available. I went there. To Mr. McKinnon, I have to say thank you very much, because I've already gone to the Board of Selectmen about the street issues, and I've already gone to the DPW, and I've been around, you know. But I have to say, one of my concerns is that High Point is, you know, as far as security is concerned, I can tell you right now, when we did McLean Hospital, we asked for an 8-foot fence around that property for the abutters. This property is not going to have any fencing, because it's in this petition. It says they won't put additional fencing. They're not going to. And my other question is, I know you said that it was non-smoking. But my question is, what is the gazebo for? Is it just, are the patients going to be able to go out to that gazebo? Because you said it was going to be a nice little area. I have a concern with that. Is that going to be for the outpatient people to stand there on the street? And one of the people in this audience actually said, I've gone through, you know, I've gone to other places, or I've been on the street, and people come out and they say, you know, can I have $1? Can I have a cigarette? You know, can I have a nip? You know, what's next? I mean, my daughter is going to walk around that street. I take a 5-mile walk around that neighborhood every day. And that's the first thing I go by is your facility, because it's on my off of my street. And I'm concerned that my kids are going to be out there, and these outpatient people are going to be standing there, you know, asking for my kids for something. That concerns me. But I guess back to your point about security, you said that, that you're not going to have any armed people there. You're not going to have security guards. It's just going to be, pretty much your clinicians. If your clinicians are at a 60% risk now, not 60%, it is happening at 60% rate. What makes you think that when they come off that facility that we're not going to be in that percentile either, or safe if in that neighborhood?
I don't know where your 60% statistic comes from, so I can't comment on it. I can tell you that we don't have anywhere near the incident rate of a staff member getting hurt that even comes anywhere close to that rate. It's actually fortunate, a very uncommon occurrence to have a staff member get hurt by a client. Certainly, because we, like I said earlier, this past year we did 5 restraints. The most riskiest part of operating an inpatient facility is doing a restraint. So that is when you're going to have an injury, that's more likely where it's going to happen. But I can't comment on your statistic. I can just comment on our operation. As far as the fencing, I'm not opposed to different fencing. There's fencing on the property. I'm fine with the fencing. But if a neighbor came to me and said, gee, can you put up a different fence or taller fence or a stockade fence? I certainly would not have an issue with that. So this is the first conversation I've had with anyone around fencing. As far as the gazebo, we actually just thought it would be a nice decorative item. Again, the inpatient, clients would not have access to it. So we, because the way the corner of the property sits, we thought aesthetically it would be pleasing. At the same time, there was a lot of concern about a gazebo. We could remove the gazebo, but it really was just because we thought it would look nice.
So it's not going to be utilized for any kind of smoking area. So you're stating your whole entire premise is not going to have any smoking at all.
Right,
zero.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. In fact, I've been advocating to the state, quite honestly, to move all facilities in the direction of going smoke-free, because nicotine addiction certainly is a big issue and shortchanges a lot of people's lives. So I thought this was a great opportunity for our organization to start out and be smoke-free.
Okay. I have a question about, actually, in your proposal on parking lot number 1.
Mm-hmm.
Is that parking lot, are those 9 lots that you have allotted for, the building next door is the counseling center, and it's got a shared parking lot, so part of their parking lot actually goes into that counseling center. I'm just wondering if that parking lot shared with that counseling center?
No. In fact, if you walk by that, there's a fence actually separating the 2 properties,
So
where before, you're right, it was kind of blended. You really couldn't see where one property started and one ended.
Mm-hmm.
You're referring to there used to be a multi-service building next door?
Correct.
Yeah. There actually is a fence dividing the properties now, and the parking lots are clearly defined between the 2 properties.
Okay, my only other concern with that is with the overflow of influx of parking. I know because the church does it, right? You'll say that. The church does it, anything going downtown, any of the parades, anything. Any kind of community thing going on right now. We do the overflow into that parking lot, right? Yes, we all agree. So my concern is, even with this fence as a petition, it's going to, there's going to be an issue with an overflow over there. What if that overflow is from your facility? Is there going to be something that says, I don't know, is that other facility going to be, it's going to be a concern for that facility, but it's also going to be a concern for other, people who go into that. I understand that there's a fence there and it's clearly defined, but if I see an open parking lot that's over there and there's nothing there, I'm pretty sure I want the closest thing to the door,
Yeah, no, I understand that. Because the inpatient facility, no one brings cars to the inpatient facility. The ratio of parking spaces we have to beds in our proposal in Middleborough is actually greater than our other facilities, and we have plenty of parking at our other facilities. So we do not see a need to need parking outside of our parking lot.
I guess my my greatest concern is every time we have this conversation, or what I hear from you,
Mm-hmm.
it's always talking about inpatient. We never talk about outpatient here. Outpatient's a big concern, because
Sure.
I know when we talk to McLean, they have they have a rollover every 7 days. You have an influx of, delivery trucks, clinicians, your staff is at 70 already, any shift. You're talking about family members now with visitation rights to come in. And we're already down to, even with all of it, if you take the 98, you subtract 70 employees, you subtract your 7 parking lots, you're already down to only 20 parking lots if you're lucky right now.
Yeah, no, it's about, right now there's about 25 parking spaces, 27, right in that range. The outpatient clinic, again, is intentionally a small clinic, because it's really just geared towards, folks who live close by. So because of other facilities we run, we do feel that the parking works fine, and certainly we will come back, and there looks like there is some opportunities to actually increase the parking and make it a little bit larger. We certainly don't have a problem also in limiting the size of the outpatient clinic, because I've heard that question raised a few times tonight about the concern about, well, how many folks are you going to serve from the community at the clinic? There is a need for outpatient services in Middleborough. And obviously that was the whole idea of why we even proposed putting any outpatient services in Middleborough. We have outpatient services in downtown Plymouth, we have them in Taunton, we have them in Manamet, we have them in New Bedford, and we actually have outreach services in Wareham. So we're not looking to have people coming from out of town to receive outpatient services. It really is, from our perspective, that you don't have enough services for folks who live locally, based upon the data that we've seen from the state.
But is it my understanding, you just said a few minutes ago, that you said to this board that your inpatient and outpatient are going to be the whole southeast region of Massachusetts?
No, not for the...
So you're saying your outpatient is going to be limited just to this community?
Now, what I said to the board is the beds service the whole region, and folks will come from all the emergency rooms in the region into those beds. The outpatient services, folks don't travel 10 or 15 miles to see a counselor or psychiatrist. Every community has folks who provide those services, and it's just really a convenience matter for folks. People who are going to counseling tend to want to do it close to home.
Okay. And I guess to the other thing about, I'm so glad Mr. Gates did a lot of work on the incident reports, because I looked at a lot of them. But to this town, and I agree that the state needs more facilities now that they shut down a lot of the state facilities. We know that. And I don't disagree that people, just like the woman over here said, we need these facilities. But I don't think it's conducive to a downtown district, and especially a budding residential area either. But I don't disagree that we need them. My other, as far as incidents and concern, what is it going to take this town? One incident? Does it have to be one? Does it have to be any? Maybe there will never be any. But there is evidence out there that shows that the incidents has come, and they will be here. My other question is to the lawyer, because and to yourself. I read that High Point is actually a nonprofit, and nonprofits in the state of Massachusetts actually, for the majority of them, don't pay realty taxes. And as Mr. McKinnon mentioned, maybe there is something that you can put in. There is actually a town in Illinois that actually, if you take a look on the web, that actually did it. They did it by square footage, and it was $1 so much for the emergency services, but there is one out there. So the question about the incident reports are, whether you rip off a sink and my house is burning in South Middleborough, what's the lag time? What's going to happen if you can't get to my house in Burnstown and it takes you 15 minutes to get there? What's the repercussion to this town is my question. What's the financial burden on this town? And I agree that was addressed tonight, but I also agree that it's going to, whether we have it currently and the incident happening now, there's enough evidence out there in other towns to show you that it's going to happen, and it's going to be here. And what this town does with that is a concern, and it's going to come back to the taxpayers of this town when it does happen. And I understand that High Point, has a great reputation, and so does it McLean, and all of them, and I agree that they all have to be here, but I also agree that it's only going to take one incident in this town to have a problem. And is that what we're going to wait for, is my question. So I think to this board, not to High Point, But to this board, I really should think about that, because that repercussions may not be today, but it could be 10 years from now, or it could be 5 years, or it could be tomorrow. But who's that going to come back to? It's going to come back to us. It's going to come back to our tax dollars. It's going to come back to Mr. Gates is now going to have to hire more policemen or more patrol cars, or the fire and ambulance has to have more ambulance service. It's all going to come back to us financially. Because if they don't pay realty taxes or they don't have something written in there, we're going to pay it. And I agree that we're already, as a state, paying for these people. But we're also not only going to be paying from the state in our own, state taxes, we're also going to be paying as individuals in our town taxes now. So what are we going to do? We're going to compound the issue is what we're going to do. That's what I feel. But I'd like to read something to you that came out of the Middleborough and the Brockton Enterprise, actually. And this was dated just last week on August 14th from this town, actually. And it actually talks about the new downtown parking signs are designed to boost business. So the DPW put new signs on it. And one of the things that was said in here, it says, Middleborough has retained its flavor of an old New England town while experiencing major residential growth and industrial park development. And according to the Cranberry County Chamber of Commerce, that was quoted by our Chamber of Commerce. And then one of the selectmen also quoted in here that you could go down and you could, just a nice little quaint picture of the town about how we could go down and have pizza, we could go down and have a defense class, we could do this. And then not only that, like 4 weeks ago I sat in a selectmen meeting and listened to a 45-minute presentation on the downtown Middleborough and how we want to bring in, travel and tourism. So to me, I don't see how you do that, although one of the selectmen would tell me that there's other places besides downtown Middleborough to visit, but I beg to differ because our historical district's here, our churches are here, our community's here, our park department's here, our library's here, our local businesses and antique shops are here, our bed and breakfast are here. All of that is in that 1 block radius. Our community college is here now. So if this is the type of thing that this town wants to quote, and this is the type of thing that you want to represent, High Point isn't what we're representing. And maybe this town shouldn't be quoting things like that then, if that's what they're looking for. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Susan Silver. I'm the women's minister at Central Baptist Church. I'm also a member of the Middleborough Youth Advocates. And a number of things that I heard this evening were these people that will be let out of this facility, and where are they going to go? And oh my goodness, what impact are they going to have on our community? I want to read you some statistics from the Bureau of Substance Abuse. These statistics are only based on the people that they track for the facilities that they track. These numbers do not represent anybody who is privately paid to go into a facility, and they do not represent the numbers of people who go into faith-based facilities. So the numbers I'm going to read to you, you can increase. In the town of Middleborough, in 2009, 317 people from this community needed rehabilitated services. And I'm sure a good number of those were dual diagnosis. In 2010, 329 people from this community needed rehabilitated services. That number jumped by 4%. Now I'm going to read you a few categories that this breaks down into. Under 21, 20 people under the age of 21 needed services in 2010. I have a contact at the Bureau of Substance Abuse who pulled from me the 2011 stats for under 21. And Chief Gates stood here and said how much better our town is getting, and that the problems that were here in the 70s aren't here now. Well, under 21 in 2011, 48. More than doubled. More than doubled. 2.5 times that under 21 that needed rehabilitative services in this town grew exponentially. And in a surprising category, between the age of 21 and 29, 158 people from this town needed rehabilitative services. 30 to 49 in age category, 125 people from this town needed rehabilitative services. 50 and older, 26 people from the town needed rehabilitative services. There's a large population in this town of 14,000 people who need these types of services. And if they don't have somewhere like High Point to go, and there are many, many, many people in this town and in surrounding towns and in all of Massachusetts who cannot get a bed, who walk out of hospitals on drugs in worse states than when they come out of these facilities, that are wandering the streets of downtown Middleborough. In these categories, used alcohol. Out of the 329, 98. So I'm not too sure that the people that come out of there are going to go right to the bars. Crack cocaine, 61 of that 329. Used heroin, 125. Injected drugs, 124. The bulk of the people in this community that need help aren't alcoholics, they are drug addicts. They're not going to go visit the bars and the alcohol places that they sell alcohol when they leave there. They're going to look for a drug, which is very prevalent in this town. And if you read the paper, if you see all the drug busts that happen here and have been happening here for the last 12 years, you would realize this problem is already in this community. There are drug addicts that sit behind that hospital and inject drugs. As one of the neighbors has already said, there's already syringes all over the place. This is already happening. The people that leave that facility will leave there healthy. I have a son who's a recovering heroin addict. He's now had almost 2 years in recovery. They leave there with hope. They leave there looking for a new life. They leave there wanting to give back. They don't leave there looking to take. And it breaks my heart that people will stand up here and say those things about the people that need those services. That is my son. There are people in this room that could be their brother, their husband, their wife. These are people who need help. And for us to stand here and say, not in my town, well, I hate to tell you it's already happening in this town, and it's happening pretty ugly, and it's happening at an increasing rate. And if places like High Point don't continue to open their doors and create new facilities, there will be more homeless people, and they will be right here in downtown Middleborough. 329 of them will be sitting somewhere in this town on a piece of property somewhere, injecting heroin because they can't get help, because they don't have a facility to go to. So I certainly hope that whatever the logistics that this board or the planning board or the planning department or the building department have to negotiate with High Point, that you get that done. So that the 329 people in this town who need help, and in Lakeville has 129 people. Carver has 178 people. These are our neighbors. These are people who come to this town and do business in this town, and we go to their towns and we do business in their towns. And we need to help these people. So I plead with you to do whatever it takes to let High Point open here.
Hi, my name is Christopher Vieira. I live at 135 Vale Street in Fall River. I'm a little nervous. You know, I've heard a lot of different things tonight, and it almost seems like we're talking more about parking spaces and taxes and, you know, stuff that really, I mean, this here is a matter of life or death, is what we're talking about here with this whole High Point thing. I really feel bad for this gentleman. I'm just coming up on 2 years and 10 months clean and sober, okay? I waited time and time again to get into a detox. I did it for my kids, I did it for my mom, it didn't happen, I had to do it for me, okay? Most of my usage was right here in Middleborough, using cocaine. There's tons of it going around. I mean, I don't even know what to say. I've just heard so much, and I've heard nothing but good things about High Point. Unfortunately, I didn't go through there, but I've heard nothing but good standards about High Point. The program that I went through, yes, you got to put the footwork in, and I did. I'm going through mass rehab right now. I'm about to get a job. I'm looking into getting my own apartment. I've just accomplished so much going through the program and going through these programs like High Point. Now, you know what? There is going to be some people that are not going to abide by the rules or walk out or whatever, but you know what? It's like a snowball effect. All you need is one person. One person gets better, doesn't stay sick, they help somebody, another addict or another recovering addict, they help an addict. It's a snowball effect. So if one person gets clean and stays clean, and they help another, I've helped people get into detoxes. I've helped people get into High Point. You know something? Like I said, all I've heard tonight is bickering on stuff that really, I mean, doesn't even matter. This is a matter of life or death for people that are out there using drugs right now and that can't get into a place such as High Point, okay? I really, I plead to you, you know, you guys make the decisions. I am totally for the High Point. Drugs are everywhere, okay? Whether it be a city of Fall River, New Bedford, Middleborough, Lakeville, it's everywhere, it's gonna be everywhere. No matter how much the cops crack down on everybody, there's still going to be somebody out there that ends up sneaking away to sell the drugs, to find the drugs, and it's going to be everywhere. You know, my plea tonight is to let this poor gentleman, I feel like everybody's been picking on him. I wouldn't even want to sit in his seat right now. I really wouldn't. My plea is to please let this gentleman do what it's an old building from what I hear. It needs some renovation. He's willing to fix it or get some taxes or money or something from somewhere. I mean, you know what I mean? I'm a perfect example right now of somebody that's stuck with the program, has done good, 2 years and 10 months clean and sober, have not even slipped once. I'm in a program still, I'm in like a community type based living, and I'm on my way to get my own apartment, get established, get a job. And you know what? If I'm the only person out of, say, 100, like I said, I'm that one person that might be able to help somebody else, and it's a snowball effect. They're going to help somebody else, and that's how to get the ball rolling. So I just thank you for your time, for me being up here, and I'm really glad you guys let me speak. I thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Diane Stewart. I live on Carmen Park Drive. I have 2 points to make. The first point, I think, is that the board has heard a lot of the residents' concerns, and I'm so glad to see such a good turnout so they could present all these concerns to you. I would hope that both the board and High Point would work hard together to try to address all of those concerns so that perhaps we could have this facility and it would, you know, allay the fears of some of the people concerning safety of the residents of this town, and especially safety of the residents that live near where the treatment place will be. My second point is that High Point mentioned that they do a lot of community outreach, and I would love if part of, you know, their contract or their commitment to be in Middleborough would include working with the police department and, you know, the DARE officers, getting more education about drug use and substance abuse problems, more information about that into the schools. I don't know how much of it is still out there. I know when I was in school we had a DARE officer, and I remember him in maybe 6th grade, and that's about it. But I would, you know, I think that that's really where the problem is, that kids are getting, you know, into drug use at a fairly young age, and obviously it's happening here in Middleborough. And the only way to prevent that, you know, High Point, their treatment center is to fix the problem that's already happened. The only way that we can prevent the problem from even starting is from an education point of view. So I would hope that if High Point is going to come here, or it's already here, that they'd work with the police chief and with the school district to try to get more education in the schools about substance abuse problems. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah Person, 83 South Main Street, and I'll be very, very quick. I've lived in Middleborough for a year. Previously, I lived in the town of Medfield, Massachusetts, which some of you may know has a state hospital which was a forensic facility. And I also, in my past history, I worked for 8 years in a state psychiatric hospital in Waltham, Massachusetts. So I'd like to invite us as kind of part of our information gathering and kind of due diligence to really try and find the apple that we're going to compare this to. You know, they are very different. The stats are very different. I can tell you from living in Medfield and being one of the members of the town leaders in Medfield that the home values for the properties and the neighborhoods that were right abutting the state hospital were not as severely as affected as you might think. So I think that it would be well worth our while to just do some more homework ourselves, you know, as we're kind of going through this process. And I thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, is there,
I do. I'm going to say one last thing, and it's going to be short. To High Point, actually, I got a question. In your petition, and as the gentleman just actually said, that it's great that you guys want to add a facility, but at the same token, you mentioned in your petition that you will be moving your Plymouth location.
16 beds.
Yep,
Yes.
to here.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
So what are you going to offer at that other facility? Are you going to remain open, or are you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Plymouth is a 105-bed facility with 5 programs at it. And just like the need for additional locked inpatient beds, there's a huge need for additional detox beds. So the 16 beds that we would be moving from Plymouth to Middleborough will remain open.
So your operation will stay open in Plymouth, including, and then you're going to expand on that?
Exactly.
So you'll offer more to the public, is that correct?
That
for
is correct.
services?
That is correct,
Okay.
yes. Yeah, the
I
size of the building won't change.
clarification on that, to
Sure.
see what was going on
Sure,
with
absolutely.
Plymouth facility, because it does say you're moving, but it doesn't say what
Right,
happens to that.
yeah, yep.
Okay,
yep.
thank you.
You're welcome.
all right, well, obviously, we've covered a tremendous amount of turf tonight. We have a lot of work to do. Mr. Whalen's going to be very busy, along with you. We've had members of our community, our clergy, addicts themselves recovering. It's actually been quite awesome. I had just jotted down 14 notes as we continue to speak through these issues. And many of them are very, very important notes, whether we're talking about drain on resources through police and fire. I was shocked when I asked the number of incidences and then compared it to the Plymouth call report. That is just shocking to me. But the long and the short of it is, we need to continue this hearing till September 12th, if that's acceptable to you. We're going to... Oh, you do? So what was the next meeting after the 12th? On the 12th? Yeah, then we should probably move it to the 26th, because A-plus recycling is going to take some time. So, and quite frankly, the list is pretty long and distinguished as it is, so, and there's a lot more material to get squared away before then. So, Joe, I know you had a question?
It's more than that.
Okay.
As far as I'm concerned, I've heard enough. I don't think we need to continue this meeting at all. It seems pretty clear to me that what we have here in letters from our fire chief, our building commissioner, our planning board, and especially the chief of police, I think they've pretty much put it where it really belongs. And that is, we should not approve this petition. Not because of any other reason, in my particular reason here, then it's going to be right in the middle of our downtown, right across from one of our most significant churches in the downtown, within a half mile of 7 liquor establishments. I'm sorry, I feel very strongly that we have to end this now. My vote's not going to change. I don't know how you feel or the rest of you feel, but, you know, and I think this gentleman is a very fine gentleman and has made a very good presentation, and I know a lot of the residents in the audience have made good presentations and that they feel very strongly about what they've said. But I'm going to take the word of our public officials, especially our chief of police. And because of that, I'm going to try to do something. I just don't know how this is going to go. But I'd like to make a motion that the petition of Southeast Regional Network, who will lease to High Point Treatment Center, Inc., to renovate the former St. Luke's Hospital for 72-bed psychiatric hospital and outpatient clinic with 200 employees over 3 shifts, be denied.
We have a motion on the floor. Do I hear a second? Not hearing any second, the motion doesn't carry. So, do I hear a motion to continue the meeting until September 26th?
I make that motion.
Second.
Joe?
Opposed?
In favor?
In favor?
In favor.
Okay, the vote's 5, and I'm in favor, so the vote's 5 to 1 in favor of continuing the hearing to the 26th. I think it goes without saying, this is for at least as long as I've been on the board, the board has always done everything in its power to try to make an applicant and petitioner, not trying to fit a round peg in a square hole, but certainly give them every entitlement and right to show cause, if you will, as to what they're doing and how they would like to do it. And then we try to balance that dramatically and mitigate, along with the abutters, the needs of the town, the resources, and we try to do the very best we can at drafting decisions that protect us, that direct us, and directs the future in our absence. And so we've always done that to the very best of our ability. And, you know, we make a huge amount of money to do that. So rest assured that we do give it our full time and attention. And I do value Chief Gates's opinion tremendously. And he has a very valid point. But there may be something that allows this facility to be here. I think everybody collectively understands that we have a problem in our society. And how we address it, you know, someone said it, we can be either part of the solution or part of the problem. You know, I think we'll just collect some more information, we'll move forward, and we'll meet again on the 26th. Again, I want to applaud you and encourage you. You know the date and the time. It will be at 7:30. Show up, continue to be part of the process, and help us help you. Okay?
Thank you.
We have one more.
No, she's got to talk.
Right.
A lot
Thank you. You just, yes, you just made my day.
Hey, Dan? Hang on one second.
I have misplaced my agenda.
We have one quick one, I believe. Yes. And then we have findings on one.
I would definitely will make it quick.
I mean, you have it? Good.
I'll make it quick, promise. Promise.
Okay, can we just have it quiet in here, please? If we could just get this one finished, I'd appreciate it.
Well, I'm Wendy Dries again, and I live at 74 Forest Street. And I just said to Mr. Freitas, thank you for opposing that decision. But I also want to say thank you to this board for pending it. Because I'm in a butter, as I had mentioned earlier, and you guys made an agreement here in, I think, less than an hour, last time I was here on June 30th for McLean. And when that was done, you didn't even think twice about it. I had a gentleman from my neighborhood come in here with an incident report from Belmont Hospital, which McLean is going to be a similar facility, and mentioned the incident reports then. And no one ever questioned it. No one said anything. But Mr. Priestley said, well, you know, it's a concern when it comes to High Point. But it wasn't a concern when it was Belmont or whether or not McLean was going in, right? No one ever thought about that. And you gave every right away to the public, because when I called your office and I said, oh, well, you guys mentioned it in a meeting, said, oh, well, we can appeal it, I found out I can't appeal it. I have to go to Superior Court. I have to use my neighbors would have to, you know, obviously go towards your judgment and have to, you know, financially use their own resources to get a lawyer. So I was kind of mad about that, because I was kind of like, wow, you know, I thought my public officials were really standing in here and really supporting me, and, you know, and we brought, you know, evidence, and we had brought stuff, and maybe we didn't do all of our homework, and it wasn't as thorough as High Point did tonight, or even Mr. Gates, because none of them were involved in that decision in McLean. But again, it'll be another rehab facility on my street, not one, but now two, if you decide to go through. So it isn't about, I'm not here so much about whether or not, you know, you made the right judgment or you not made the right judgment. But I listened to someone say on your board, said, you know, I'm so happy to see that there's such a public outcry. But I felt like I wasn't educated by you guys, because you already knew about High Point before McLean even went in. You were, but I know you didn't have the right to tell us about it. You were already in negotiations with High Point.
We absolutely were not.
Excuse me.
The zoning board was not in negotiations with High Point. High Point submitted an application with the
First time we've
state
seen
stamped
this
in
tonight.
there.
I'm not talking
In
about High Point,
July.
but you were well aware of it. You had other opportunities. Excuse me. I can tell you that this member of the board knew nothing when McLean came before us. I knew nothing of anything coming in, and I bet if you asked each one of us individually, we'd sit there and go, huh? We didn't know. Please don't make the assumption that we know everything that goes on.
I'm asking you, was anybody aware that High
That's
Point
not
was
what
coming?
you said.
Okay,
You
I'm
didn't
sorry.
ask. You said you were
I
aware.
apologize then. I apologize. I take that and I retract it. But I just felt like I was not I don't feel we did enough justice in that circumstance, and neither did not just me, because you guys wrote down that it was the abutter, but I'm not the only abutter. My neighbors asked me to speak on their behalf, and a lot of them, and some of them were here, and they've already left, and we're here, and we've had this conversation with, I've had this conversation with, maybe 10 members of my community, and they all have the same concern, that we didn't do enough justice to McLean. And the only reason I'm bringing that up is that I watched what happened here tonight, and I think you did a great job with this, and I think that you penned it, and that's great, and I think it'll be a better service. And I do apologize if I was wrong about the information not being provided. I apologize. But I wasn't aware about it either. It was on public, and I had to look it up, and I was concerned about that. And I do know that if I misspoke, then please, I apologize to you. But I feel like when we went through that, it just wasn't enough. And to this board, if we go through this, and we have tonight, I would like to see going forward in the future that we do more of this, that we pen things, that we further investigate things, we further, exhaust all our resources before we say yes. And that's all we're asking for. We're pleading with you before you make choices like this, and that are going to be detrimental to our community, or even, to our taxpayers.
Why do you assume it's detrimental?
Yeah.
Well, it's going to cost us to have to do the incident reports. It's going to cost us taxpayer money to man those.
Don't you think the hospital was costing us before? And they weren't paying taxes either.
You mean St. Luke's Hospital?
Yeah.
I do agree with that.
How many calls do you think they had to answer to that place?
I don't disagree with you, but now you're going to have double that. You're going to have 2 facilities now.
Well, double what?
You're going to have 2 facilities that you're going to have both.
How many issues have there been with the other place?
Which
that you're
one?
aware of?
McLean?
Yeah.
I can name probably off the top of my head about 4 or 5, and severe ones. Severe.
Okay.
McLean is being sued currently, from 2011, being sued for letting a patient out that had psychotic episodes and released them to the public. Never notified the family, and they're being sued because I know,
You
but
understand that the HIPAA, they're not allowed to, but that's okay.
I understand that.
Okay,
What I'm
well-
saying to this town is only going to take one incident to happen, and that incident could just be in my neighborhood.
There's no way for us to prevent
I
any
understand
incident.
that there's no way for you to prevent that, but it's only going to be that, and I understand that
Okay, well,
that's
I'm
true.
just.
But I'm asking, or I'm pleading with the board, that when you make these decisions, that you think about what's going on, or take into consideration what other towns are going through, like Mr. Gates said tonight. Those are
We
concerns.
actually would have to break down those numbers and actually look at what he compared.
Yes, I agree with you. And I agree
I haven't
with,
seen the numbers, so I don't understand what the information was presented
I
to
agree
us.
with you, but I'm not here about High Point. I'm here about McLean. I just feel that we didn't do enough justice to that, and all I wanted to do is
Well,
state
I'm trying
that
to figure out what the
on the
issue
record.
is that was so egregious that we did.
That we didn't look at the evidence. We didn't look at other communities that have similar facilities. We didn't look at Belmont Hospital close enough to see what their incident reports are. We even brought,
You do understand there's a huge mental health issue in
Yes,
the
I
town,
do.
And there's a need for these type of
I
facilities.
do. It's all over the state. It's whether
But
it's middle.
you don't want it in your neighborhood.
I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that we should have further investigated before we just said yay or nay.
We cannot
And we
treat-
didn't do
well,
that.
Well, understand, if we don't treat these people, they're still in your neighborhood.
You're
Yes,
still
I
having
agree.
incidents. You still might walk out your door and find somebody shooting up heroin right where your daughter can see it.
Oh, I
You
know,
can
I've seen
do
it.
your 5-mile walk and run into 3 drunks sleeping on the road. You can still run into this because there's no place to treat them. So when you say it costs the town, my question to you is, where the heck do you think we live? Do you not realize we live in the town? Do you realize that we have the same concerns you do? Do you not understand that we are not some kind of airy-fairy group of people?
I didn't ask you that, and I didn't
No,
state
but
that.
you make it
No, I did
sound
not
like,
make that assumption.
"Oh, well, we
No.
need it, so let's do it. Oh, we don't care."
No, I'm not
Please.
stating that.
When you say it's going to cost the town, what exactly does it, you aren't breaking it down. You say, you have said to me, I think the
It
truest thing
financially
you
is-
said, the truest thing you said to me that I heard was, I take a 5-mile walk, I walk by High Point, I don't want my daughter running into people asking questions, asking for this, asking for that. So my question to you
That's
is,
a safety issue for
as
me.
you abut McLean, has your daughter been accosted by people saying, give me a fag?
No.
Give me a drug? Give me this?
McLean isn't
give
here.
me-"
Can I
Then
hang
what's
on
the
hang on a
problem?
second? Can I just, I'd like to just take this down a couple notches.
Yes.
I understand your point.
Yes.
Your point is how you feel.
Right.
And we understand that.
I'm not saying,
No, let me just finish. And so, I don't want to get into a tit for tat or try
Right,
to
exactly. I don't.
justify, substantiate how I felt, how the meeting went, how the outcome of the
that's
meeting
all I
was.
want to state,
That's-
is how I felt at the meeting.
And you've done that
Exactly.
very well. And
Thank you.
I think your statement has been made and understood. And so, to that degree,
Yes.
if you had something beyond that to discuss.
No, I don't. All I
Okay.
wanted to mention is I felt like the different, if you look at High Point, you guys did a great job tonight. I really do. You pended it, you're looking at further things, you're further investigating. But when we looked at McLean, we didn't do that. And I just wish, okay, for this, that we had done a better job.
Okay.
I really, that's all I want to state. That's all my community, the people in my community want to point out to this board, was that they wanted to state and come out and say, excuse me, I don't feel we did enough justice in making that decision. I really don't. And regardless, yes, if I misquote, I apologize. If whether my personal feelings are here and your personal feelings are here, I understand that, but that's how I feel, and if I come across that way, I apologize. I don't mean to, but you're right. The bottom line is I just wanted to point out to this board, on the behalf of not just myself, but my abutters, okay? It wasn't about me. My abutters asked me to come here tonight and asked me to speak and state that, and asked to say, we did not do good enough job in this town. We made a decision, and we didn't further investigate it where we should have exhausted it more, and we didn't do that. And that's what I'm stating tonight.
Duly noted and matter of public record.
Thank you.
All righty, thank you.
Findings on the petition of Mark Franklin. Findings, number one, the proposed site is appropriate for the use of the structure. Public water and on-site storage facilities are available which will adequately service the site. Number three, the use involved will not be detrimental to the establishment or future character of the neighborhood and town and subject to appropriate conditions or safeguards if deemed necessary. There will be no nuisance or serious hazard to vehicles or pedestrians. Adequate and appropriate facilities will be provided to ensure the proper operation of the use of the structure. That's it.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Let's go home.
Yep. Norman, do you have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
At 10.
So your next meeting is
10:34.
No, 26th.
But this hearing will be on the 26th.
Oh, for this hearing, yes, but our next meeting.